Chapter 1008, Receive Help from a Savior. Chapter 1008, Receive Help from a Savior. The blood shield hovered like a mountain. It protected the entire mysterious heavenly glacier as if it was a massive, iron wall that blockaded everything. At the same time, the brutal, bloodthirsty aura surged and expanded fiercely. It covered the area of more than 1,000 miles around. The blood mark on that shield wiggled while the bloodlines moved like worms. It looked like a living object. Blood from hundreds of dead ghost mark warriors flew in the void like the raindrops. They made the blood shield dark and cruel to the utmost. It looked as if it had become the source of all evil things in this world. The sharp tip of the thunder god spear stabbed the shield at the center of the blood mark. The silver spear sprung as if some evil energy had attacked it. Fine cracks began to appear on the spear. Warriors of the Ghostmark clan and Potion and Tool Pavilion kept silent as they were all gazing at the shield. They were aghast because none of them knew what was going on. Fu Wei stood on the mysterious heavenly glacier, her face pale and stern. She furrowed her bold brows, her bright eyes gazing at the blood shield. She was so confused. Du Lin, the chosen son of heaven of the Ghostmark clan, paled. His keen eyes raked through the area to find something. Although he was struggling in his mind, Du Lin took a deep breath and spoke respectfully to the dark void, who interfered with our Ghostmark clan's matter. He released his soul consciousness, trying to swamp over the blood shield. However, as soon as his soul consciousness touched it, his consciousness was distorted as if he had sunk into a peat bog that was very tough to get rid of. His soul energy was consumed massively. Being grim, Du Lin's heart sank into the abyss. He anxiously looked at the shield that had appeared out of nowhere. He was reluctant that he couldn't move forward or retreat. No one replied to him. The massive blood shield seemed to be unowned. With his realm and powerful soul consciousness, Du Lin couldn't detect the general direction of the owner of this shield. He became sterner and more anxious. He looked around, his eyes panic-stricken. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The subtle lightning flashes shot out from the tip of the thunder god spear. However, the blood chi immediately burst them off and dissolved them. The short spear sprung severely. Du Lin was restlessly terrified. The dim-lit surroundings were absolutely quiet, making his soul uneasy. He felt as if a pair of evil eyes were hiding in the dark, gazing at each of his moves. We, the Ghostmark clan, will remember this. Taking a deep breath, Du Lin said something curt like that. Then, his mind flickered as he grabbed the void and retrieved the thunder god spear. The spear turned into a lightning strike, disappearing into his sleeve. Let's go, Du Lin suddenly shouted, flying toward his mad shark battleship. All the warriors of the Ghostmark clan were surprised. They looked at him with great confusion on their faces. The three elders of the Ghostmark clan hesitated. They couldn't help but shout, "Young master." Du Lin's face was dark and cold, shouting at them. "I told you to leave. Did you not hear me?" The three elders of the Ghostmark clan discolored. They didn't dare to say more. They spread his order. Members of the Ghostmark clan scattered like fish swimming in the sea. They returned quietly to their battleship. All of them felt as if they had a big rock hanging above their hearts as they looked at the hovering blood shield in silence. Du Lin's battleship started leaving quietly. All the guards of Potion and Tool Pavilion were shocked. Seeing the Ghostmark clan's battleships retreat like a low tide, they felt so happy that they burst out cheering. Standing on the mysterious heavenly glacier, Fu Wei looked at the giant blood shield with a complicated countenance. She was bewildered for a while and then she bent her body to thank the mysterious helper. "Thank you for your support, Precursor." She didn't know who was controlling that massive blood shield. Swoosh. A bloodlight shot toward the unknown area of the immense outer space. The massive blood shield shrank rapidly, flying away with the bloodlight. It disappeared shortly after. 5,000 miles away. Du Lin's face was dark and harsh. He swallowed a red pellet, panting. The three elders of the Ghostmark clan stood silently by him. They looked confused and complicated. "Young master," one of them called him in a low voice. Du Lin awoke from his thought. He instinctively took a deep breath, his face pale. Its level was much higher than the Thunder God's spear. The three Ghostmark elders were frightened. They finally understood why Du Lin insisted on retreating. The original incipient grade weapons were classified in 7 levels. The Thunder God Spear was at level 2 and it was already a top treasure in the Ghostmark clan. Its reputation was well known around Agate Star area. However, the level of that giant blood shield was much higher than the Thunder God Spear. What kind of F***king intimidating character was able to control this weapon? No wonder why their young master decided to retreat even though his question wasn't answered. He even forgot Suolu's order. He didn't keep his mind on the cannon. In Agate Star area, there are some unwritten rules that everyone knows. The higher level the divine weapon was, the higher the power and realm of its owner. Those who could control original incipient grade weapons were at least at peak of ethereal god realm. Most of them were at incipient god realm. If the user's realm and energy weren't enough, he couldn't utilize the divine weapon or protect it. As that shield was a high-level weapon, its owner was also likely an intimidating existence who could stand firm in this world. Du Lin couldn't detect the aura of the Bloodshield's owner. However, he instinctively assumed that that helper's realm and understanding of power Upanishad were beyond his perception from the quality of the shield. He was scared, so he left immediately. The 3 elders of the Ghostmark clan and Du Lin thought that it was a wise move. Each divine weapon at original incipient grade is recorded in detail by Potion and Tool Pavilion. The higher level the weapon is, the more detailed the description will be. Du Lin's voice was tired and husky. But that blood shield. I have never heard about it before. I don't know its origin and its owner. I don't want the Mad Shark Fleet and everybody else to get involved in this. Young master, you're wise. The 3 elders of the Ghostmark clan were shocked. They respectfully expressed their opinion. Under any point of view, Du Lin's decision was unquestionable. Since that hidden expert could control a divine weapon that was stronger than the Thunder God Spear, that helper should be at peak of incipient god realm in their eyes. This kind of expert was strong enough to clean up their Mad Shark Fleet and burn them into ashes. The other had just shielded the mysterious heavenly glacier and hadn't done anything to attack. Du Lin's side thought that it was the opponent's warning and that they should know their competence. If they couldn't recognize it, the next attack would crush them all. Du Lin had a good sense. He initially retreated and gave up the cannon. He wanted to protect himself and his family's force. Even if Suolu felt irritated, he couldn't voice anything. Notify the Great Elder. Report our battle in detail. Do not miss any information. Stress about the giant blood shield. I think he may know something. Du Lin waved his hand helplessly. He felt tired. He had traveled thousands of miles, caused a grudge against Fu Wei, and left hundreds of his soldiers behind. To Du Lin, it was an unprecedented attack. The 3 elders left quietly. They all looked sad and dispirited. In the vast universe, Fu Wei retrieved the mysterious heavenly glacier. She returned to the deck of her battleship with a pale face. Potion and Tool Pavilion's guards who were scattering around the deck greeted her quietly. Fu Wei's beautiful body was damp with sweat. She smoothed her cascading long hair. Her bright, complicated eyes swept through the warriors standing on the deck. She asked with surprise, "Where's Shi Yang? I just saw him here." Not long after Yu and Du Lin had engaged in the battle, he quietly left to the training room. Fu Wei furrowed her bold brows. She contemplated, looking at the vast universe in the direction that massive shield had disappeared. She said, "We've met our savior." And Yun totally agreed with her and nodded. "I wonder which precursor has just helped us. Otherwise, we would have had a fatal consequence this time. Anyway," she paused, speaking suspiciously, "we don't have any record of that shield in our records of original incipient grade weapons." Fu Wei's soft body shivered. "No? Are you sure?" And Yun nodded again. "I'm sure. We don't have any information." The light in Fu Wei's bright eyes rippled. She had many thoughts in her mind, so she was absorbed into her thoughts for a long time. "That shield is much stronger than the Thunder God Spear." And Yun was baffled, asking unconsciously, "What level?" Fu Wei shook her head. "I don't know. It seems to be beyond my knowledge. I think that even our current pavilion master doesn't have the capability to refine such a powerful weapon. The formation carved on that shield was really marvelous. It looked so real and it was changing every second. I couldn't see the mysteries of that kind of formation. And Yun shivered in fear. She knew Fu Wei's level in refining tools. Fu Wei was a rare talent who came once every 10,000 years in Potion and Tool Pavilion. She was also the prominent candidate for the precious throne of the Pavilion Master. Her knowledge of refining things was approved by the elders. They agreed that her attainment was much better than most of the elders. If she couldn't understand the changing formation on the blood shield, it was enough to prove that the shield was one of the top rarest divine weapons in this world. Perhaps. It doesn't belong in our agate star area, said Fu Wei after pondering for a long time. And Yun was more inexplicably surprised. It doesn't belong in our agate star area. It doesn't belong in our agate star area. Fu Wei was baffled. After a while, she seemed to recall something. Her blue eyes glistered. She whispered instinctively, Our Potion and Tool Pavilion doesn't have any record about him. He's not from agate star area. Right. She shook her head, laughing at her own idea. She thought that she was too skeptical then. Maybe she was so tired that she had tried to link the two things that wouldn't have anything in common. How could an original God Realm warrior control a divine weapon that was stronger than the Thunder God Spear? It was not logical, indeed. Even if an original God Realm warrior had such a divine weapon, he shouldn't have been able to parry Du Lin's attack. It's common sense, right? She tried to reason with her common sense and she came up with the conclusion that she was just overthinking it. She laughed at her silly idea and thought that it was because she was too tired. Thus, she quit mulling over this thought. Chapter 1009, The Shield has become heavier. Chapter 1009, The Shield has become heavier, _ Fu Wei and An Yun stood in front of a closed door inside the battleship. They gently knocked. If Shi Yang hadn't poured energy into her body, Fu Wei wouldn't have been able to resist Du Lin's attack for so long. Fu Wei and An Yun were going to remember Shi Yang's support forever in their hearts. After the battleship had departed again, Fu Wei, who hadn't recovered her powers yet, came to show her gratitude to Shi Yang. They had knocked on the stone door for a while. However, no one had responded. When Fu Wei and An Yun had lost their patience, the stone door cracked open, revealing a ferociously ugly face. He had given you a lot of energy. He's cultivating in seclusion to recover his energy. You don't need to come here and disturb him, Leona said with bad manners. Then, she suddenly slammed the door shut, blocking Fu Wei and An Yun outside. Both Fu Wei and An Yun could see the cold and evil intentions of Leona's eyes. She didn't like the two of them. The two exchanged looks with surprised faces. Being baffled for a while, Fu Wei beamed a faint smile and shook her head. Never mind. We should leave. I also want to recover first. An Yun nodded. She didn't give any advice and just left with Fu Wei. They didn't know what was going on in that cultivating chamber. Leona closed the stone door. She didn't say anything and walked directly towards a secret room. Zhuo Shi and Xian Ming stayed in a corner of the training room, looking at her with admiration and respect. Leona carefully opened the secret door and then got in. The stone chamber wasn't big. The divine weapon Fu Wei and Du Lin respected as if it was a thing from God lay on the ground like a broken stone. It looked naturally plain without any bloodlight, brutal aura, or any beams of energy. Shi Yang sat still on the cushion in the center of the room with an ashen face. His body had many bleeding cuts, some of which were deep to the bone as if he got slashed by many massive knives. It looked very scary. He looked weak, sitting cross-legged. His body was slowly gathering wisps of energy. Fei Lan and Ka Tuor were watching over him, their faces stern and anxious. At the moment Fu Wei and Du Lin fought, Shi Yang discreetly walked off the deck and entered his secret chamber in the cultivating room. Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor didn't care about the battle between Potion and Tool Pavilion and Du Lin's force. Seeing him leave, they followed. They had seen Shi Yang release his power and send the blood shield away through the space slit. From that space slit, they had seen Du Lin's thunderbolt attack and the subtle change of the giant blood shield, which had stopped Du Lin's extremely fierce attack. Also at that moment, Shi Yang started to tremble restlessly, his body cracking and bleeding. Ka Tuor's eyes had a beam of inexplicable respect at Shi Yang. He couldn't press down his excitement. Du Lin at peak of ethereal god realm had struck his fatal attack with the Thunder God Spear, a divine weapon at original incipient grade, but he couldn't pierce through the shield to damage the mysterious heavenly glacier. What kind of power was that? Ka Tuor studied the young man who was bleeding with reverence arising from the bottom of his heart. Also at that moment, he realized that although he was at the same third sky of original god realm, even if he used his best abilities, he couldn't be an equal match to this young man. He was worth the successor of the master of the Cortege of Eight. I sent them away. Leona closed the secret chamber, frowning, talking indifferently. Fei Lan nodded. She glanced at Shi Yang, sighing. She didn't agree with the idea that Shi Yang would join the battle himself. At the third sky of original god realm, even if he used the shield to resist Du Lin's attack with force, Shi Yang still got wounded. Since Fei Lan didn't know how severe Shi Yang's wounds were, she was distraught. Leona was mean to Fu Wei and An Yun because of Shi Yang's lousy condition in the secret chamber. Because of them, Shi Yang got hurt. Leona wouldn't give them a nice face. Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor were watching the young man in silence. They seemed to be waiting for something. Gradually, the bleeding cut slowly closed at a speed that the naked eye could observe. After the wounds had begun to heal, all the bleeding cracks on his body were healed within 1 hour, leaving nothing. However, Fei Lan and the other two were still severe. Time flew hurriedly. The young man opened his eyes. He exhaled and spoke calmly, "Don't worry. I'm okay." The three of them could finally relax. Du Lin at third sky of ethereal god realm with his Thunder God Spear had struck a deadly lightning strike. That one was really formidable. He sighed while looking at the shield near him and grinned. "Luckily we have this shield. We're so lucky. Or else." Right at the moment, Du Lin struck his lethal attack. Shi Yang had used space power to teleport the blood shield to that specific locus in the void. The bloodmark shield in the shield was activated and it connected to Shi Yang's soul. That was how he was able to control it. Before that attack arrived, the mark on the shield was activated, crazily taking in blood and essence chi around. It also absorbed all the key kinds of energy in his body. At that moment, negative energy of his body, essence chi, and even immortal demon blood were sucked away. All of them were poured into the massive blood shield. 80% of his power was taken away, including negative energy, god power, and immortal demon blood. That was how the blood shield could enlarge and parry that strike. He didn't expect to consume a considerable amount of energy to use that blood shield. At third sky of original god realm, the combination of all kinds of magical energy in his body could compare to the accumulated energy of the second sky or even third sky of ethereal god realm. However, his energy was just enough to perform 10% of the shield. Anyway, even if it was just 10%, it was enough to stop the Thunder God Spear, the strike of Du Lin at peak of ethereal god realm. After Du Lin struck the giant blood shield with Thunder God Spear, the shield still looked intact. It seemed to be unbreakable. However, its owner couldn't endure that attack. He got hurt badly. Luckily, as the battle happened, Shi Yang had discreetly absorbed a significant amount of essence chi from the dead. His consumed energy was refilled quickly and he was able to have a speedy recovery. At this moment, Shi Yang was in his best condition, which was because of the marvelous function of his devouring ability. His energy wasn't exhausted, which would prevent him from joining the battle. He looked at that small shield, his visage complicated. He waved his hand and the shield hissed all the way to his hand. The weight of a mountain fell in his hand. He couldn't hold it, so he lowered his hand until he had almost reached the stone ground to steady his body. Too heavy. He took a deep breath, his eyes frightened. This blood shield is as heavy as a mountain. I have enough strength to lift up a 1,000-meter-long mountain, but it's very difficult to lift this shield. Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor were baffled. It wasn't like this, said Fei Lan after contemplating for a while. Nodding, Shi Yang gave a forced smile. Yeah, when I picked it up before, it wasn't as heavy as it is now. After it has been activated to resist that strike, its weight has doubled. The other three were surprised. Senior, which level is this blood shield? Ka Tuor became excited. The Thunder God Spear Du Lin used is at original incipient grade. I don't know its level, but I could see that his spear couldn't attack this shield. So, this shield's level should be higher than his God Spear, right? Fei Lan and Leona also wore a complicated look as they looked at the plain shield. The expert that cultivated Death Power Upanishad had given the Dark Sky family this shield. Fei Lan kept it for so many years. However, Fei Lan didn't know the level of this shield because she had never had its approval to activate it. Thus, she didn't know its mysteries or its power. However, she was curious to see which level this shield was. I don't know its real level, Shi Yang chose his words. Fei Lan and the other two were disappointed, but Shi Yang continued, but I'm sure that the Thunder God Spear's level is lower than this shield. Because my realm and power were too low, of course, I can't resist Du Lin by myself. I could only resist him because the quality of the shield is much better than the Thunder God Spear. Or else, I wouldn't have only gotten hurt. My god body would burst off. Listening to him, Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor's eyes brightened. Shi Yang beamed a forced smile, looking at the other three. Seems like our understanding of the bloodthirsty courtage of 8 and their master is still shallow. I think our inheritances are the absolute powers of this world, the mysterious but marvelous peak powers Upanishads of all galaxies. Our precursors must be the existences that topped all the high-grade star areas. The other three became so thrilled. Waving his hand, Shi Yang muttered, "You guys can leave now. I'm all right. Yeah, I want to study this shield. I will try to see if I can find something." The other three nodded, trying to hold the excitement in their hearts. They left with a discreet joy. Dark, corrosion, and chaos were their main powers Upanishads. They knew and they believed that their powers Upanishad were really powerful. If they could prove their belief, they would be more resolute and confident of their powers. It would help strengthen their belief and their persistence in pursuing their realms. They closed the door and left. Shi Yang stroked the heavy blood shield. He was confused, mumbling to himself. At the moment that spear impacted the shield, I could sense so many magical changes in the center of the seal. It seems to be the utmost power of that mysterious and complex formation. The one who fabricated this shield had gone against the rules of nature. He did have delicate attainment. While he was talking to himself, his soul altar swayed and spun. His mind relaxed as his soul consciousness seeped into the blood shield. The small, plain shield glowed with a red halo. The blood mark, which had disappeared, emerged little by little. It looked mysteriously evil as if it had hidden some astonishing surprise. Chapter 10:10, When Words Get Sore, Adding More Words is Useless. Chapter 10:10, When Words Get Sore, Adding More Words is Useless. Shi Yang's soul altar slowly revolved. The mark on the glabella of his host soul glowed. Wisps of soul consciousness poured into the shield and connected to the marvelous formation on the shield. Clusters of blood cloud appeared, changing continually. Shortly after, countless mysterious and extraordinary formations emerged on the shield. The clusters of blood cloud had connected to each of the blood clouds of the mark on his forehead perfectly. Shortly after, the blood mark seemed to turn into a mouth. Inside that mouth, a small vortex appeared and enlarged. It created a fiercely strong suction force. The 700 acupuncture points on his body made some commotion. The vortexes inside each acupuncture points were revolving with the mark of the shield. They had become the extension to the suction force from the shield. His eyes brightened. He stroked the shield unintentionally with one hand. He grinned as he knew he had a good grasp of one ability of the shield. The blood mark on the shield had that powerful suction of devouring power Upanishad. It could collect energy and transmit it to his acupuncture points. This shield wasn't just a divine defensive tool. It had more astounding abilities. Shi Yang quieted down. He studied the mysteries of the shield and didn't recognize the time flying. After an unknown time, The stone door squeaked open. Fei Lan frowned, entering the chamber. Some VIP from Potion and Tool Pavilion is about to arrive. Fu Wei and Potion and Tool Pavilion staff are waiting on the deck. Bewildered, Shi Yang carefully put away the blood shield. He contemplated for a while and then said naturally, "Let's go there and see." Fei Lan nodded quietly. Dash. On the deck of the massive battleship, Fu Wei, and Yun, and Potion and Tool Pavilion's guards were watching, waiting for something solemnly. The guards of Potion and Tool Pavilion nerves relaxed as if they knew that when the person came, they would be free from danger. Fu Wei's face glowed with health. After recovering, she had almost resumed her powers. She was chatting cheerfully with An Yun. When Shi Yang, Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor emerged from the cabin, Fu Wei smiled gently and nodded at him. "Are you okay?" "I'm all right." Shi Yang looked at the dark void and asked curiously, "Who's about to arrive?" "You'll know later." Fu Wei felt so excited, laughing. You must be interested." Shi Yang was more astounded. 2 hours later. An intense light shot toward from a far distant. That light moved like a meteor. It appeared in people's sight shortly. It was a lozenge crystal war chariot, which was fabricated with empty fantasy crystal. It seemed to have the power to move through space. While the war chariot was dashing, it rose ripples of space energy, which looked mysteriously inexplicable. Swoosh! The crystal lozenge war chariot moved like a silky ribbon, but it was as sharp as a sword cutting across the sky. It was heading towards the huge battleship. Fu Wei didn't use the protective halo. She put down all defensive systems to allow that war chariot to land. 10th Elder. Guards of Potion and Tool Pavilion bent their bodies slightly to greet him, their eyes respectful. A lanky old man stood clasping his hands behind his back on the glass war chariot. Standing behind him were 3/3 sky of ethereal god realm experts. They all had calm and heavy auras as imposing as mountains. They were indeed famous warriors. Uncle Duo, Fu Wei smiled weakly, walking forward to greet him and speaking calmly, "You're here." With the first glance at that old man, Shi Yang knew his status. He couldn't hide his surprise. Jia Duo, the 10th Elder of Potion and Tool Pavilion, had 3rd sky of ethereal god realm cultivation base. He was the one who cultivated the extraordinary space power Upanishad. Most of the fantasy sky ring and the teleport formations that Potion and Tool Pavilion were selling were from this man. In Agate Star area, his understanding of space power Upanishad could be at the Grandmaster level. As they were warriors who cultivated space power Upanishad, Shi Yang assessed him discreetly, his face grave. Space energy fluctuation on Jia Duo's body was trivial, which gave Shi Yang a feeling of something unreal. This man was standing on this massive battleship, but he looked like he was in some unknown space. Shi Yang was bewildered. He had a strange feeling that Jia Duo was standing in a space crack this entire time. He was worth his 3rd sky of ethereal god realm cultivating space power Upanishad. His god body moved freely through space slits. Without magical materials like empty fantasy crystal, he could still move through space. In the legends, experts cultivating space power could travel through space slits and move from one space node to another within a blink of an eye. At that time, their god bodies would like that they were in the fantasy, unfixed spaces. That kind of warrior was the toughest target. It was hard to kill them. Unless one had the power to block all spaces, they couldn't subdue the experts cultivating space power Upanishad no matter how many warriors were sent for this assassination mission. Warriors using space power were good at teleporting between space. If they wanted to go, there wouldn't be as many solutions to block them. Jia Duo arrogantly walked off his glass war chariot. He nodded slightly to Fu Wei and said, "You did great. You found the cannon. You earned marvelous merit this time." Fu Wei grinned, instinctively glancing at Shi Yang. "I'm just lucky. If he didn't give me the cannon, I wouldn't have gotten the cannon even if I was better." Until this moment, Jia Duo looked at Shi Yang for the first time. He frowned, talking indifferently. "Too bad." "What's too bad?" Shi Yang was surprised. "You have the talent in cultivating space power Upanishad, but your powers Upanishads are mixed up. You're cultivating more powers, Upanishad. Jarjuo's eyes had a hidden disdain. What a greedy cultivation. It's hard to advance space power Upanishad to the acme. You've progressed space power Upanishad, so you know some abilities. Ordinary people hate that they couldn't risk their lives to cultivate this power. You have a good fortune, but you don't want to grasp it. You have more powers Upanishads, which couldn't help you maintain your pure space power Upanishad. It's too bad. Shi Yang pouted, saying nothing. In Jarjuo's eyes, space power Upanishad was the best power Upanishad in this world. He considered this kind of power as his glory and he had invested his lifetime effort in it. Seeing Shi Yang was a good seed, but he had mixed powers Upanishad. Jarjuo wasn't pleased. He thought that Shi Yang was just wasting his innate talent and he would never reach the most subtly marvelous realm of space power Upanishad. 10th Elder, you too are cultivating space power Upanishad. If you don't mind, shall we discuss it a little bit? Fu Wei kindly suggested. She wanted to help Shi Yang increase his attainment in cultivating space power. As she knew Jarjuo was the one who had the most exquisite achievement in cultivating this power in Agate Star area, it would be much better than the dozens of books she had given to Shi Yang if Jarjuo agreed to help. However, it was obvious that Jarjuo didn't want to teach Shi Yang. He shook his head resolutely. He's not a member of Potion and Tool Pavilion. His cultivating isn't thorough and it is mixed. He won't have any good achievement. I don't want to waste my efforts on him. Listening to him, Fu Wei was embarrassed. She gave a reluctant smile. Shi Yang was perplexed, but he didn't say anything. However, he felt annoyed and thought that this old man was too arrogant. He had considered himself a mighty sage in cultivating space power. Oh well, I thought he was very powerful. Turns out he's just an ethereal god realm warrior. Ka Tuor grinned and grunted. The masters of Devil Bloodstar and Monster Dragonstar, the incipient Godrealm experts, are more modest to my senior. Just a third sky of ethereal Godrealm and you think you're rocketing into the sky? Haha. Well, it's like water in a full bottle that doesn't move while water in a bottle half full sways a lot. Jarjuo frowned. One of the third sky of ethereal Godrealm warriors standing behind him shouted angrily, his face cold. Wanton. Fu Wei and Anyun discolored. They didn't think that these two groups of people would quarrel with each other instead of discussing fruitfully. Fu Wei suddenly recognized that she was a little self-righteous in this case. Pushing too much wouldn't help. She thought that as Jarjuo was cultivating space power Upanishad, he would appreciate Shi Yang, a warrior cultivating space power Upanishad too. However, she knew she was wrong from Jarjuo's voice and manner. Jarjuo always wanted to find an assistant to handle his junk works, which were fabricating high-quality fantasy sky ring and teleport formation. After that, he could have more time to study his space power Upanishad. Shi Yang was a suitable candidate. He met all the requirements. However, he denied joining Potion and Tool Pavilion, which gave Jarjuo a big question. That was why he wasn't so friendly to Shi Yang. It was all because of his presumption. If my senior wasn't generous enough, would you have gotten the cannon? Ka Tuor smiled faintly. Some people don't know how to repay a favor. Quite the contrary, they only have harsh words. I can say my knowledge has widened today. Jarjuo's eyes shrank, talking faintly. We paid 100 million divine crystals for the cannon. It's like a business. We don't owe you anything. Pausing for a while, Jarjuo continued indifferently. As we're delivering you to Shadow Ghostly Prison, it's a generous bonus out of our scheme. Potion and Tool Pavilion owes you nothing. Ka Tuor laughed again. He wanted to say more, but Shi Yang had stopped him. He looked at Fu Wei, bent slightly to greet her and then said, "Your rescue team is here. I think it's time for us to leave." Fu Wei's bright eyes were flustered as she whispered, "We haven't reached Shadow Ghostly Prison yet. Moreover, our destination is in the place too. You guys can go with us, anyway." Shaking his head, Shi Yang glanced at Jarjuo with strange eyes. "Someone doesn't welcome us on this battleship. I don't want to stay here to irritate people. We should bid farewell from here." He nodded to Fei Lan. Fei Lan understood his intention. She went to the cultivating room to call for Zhuo Shi and Xian Ming. Jia Duo was still arrogant. He just snorted and didn't want to make them stay. Fu Wei had a headache. She tried to tell Shi Yang to stay until they reached the destination. However, Shi Yang insisted on leaving. Shi Yang nodded to Fu Wei and his team departed from the battleship when Zhuo Shi, Xian Ming, and Fei Lan got back on the deck. They flew into the dark, immense galaxy, and headed to Shadow Ghostly Prison. Seeing Shi Yang fly away, Fu Wei had a complicated look. She sighed inwardly. At the moment she looked at Jia Duo, she had a hidden sadness. She was a little indifferent, opposite of her previous warm welcome. Chapter 10-11, Shadow Ghostly Prison. Chapter 10-11, Shadow Ghostly Prison. His from Blood Devil's tribe. He saved Migi, the youngest son of the chief of Evil Dragon tribe. He's the best friend of Ghost Hunter from the Brutal Dragon tribe. Why did you enrage him? After Shi Yang's team left, Fu Wei asked her uncle with her furrowing, bold brow. As they were both elders of the Potion and Tool Pavilion, her status and position weren't lower than Jia Duo's even though Fu Wei was younger. She didn't need to hide things as she could tell him directly. And Yoon also thought that Jia Duo's deed wasn't appropriate but she didn't have the right to voice here. There was no need to mention Shi Yang's relationships with the leaders of Monster Clan and Demon Clan. With only the fact that Shi Yang had given them the cannon, and Yoon thought Potion and Tool Pavilion owed him. Then, Shi Yang didn't leave when Du Lin attacked them fiercely. At the critical moment, Shi Yang had helped Fu Wei recovered her energy. And Yoon gradually developed good feelings for Shi Yang. She thought he was worth establishing a friendship with. However, right as he had arrived, Jia Duo used sharp words to force Shi Yang's team to leave the battleship. And Yoon thought that his deed wasn't appropriate. We're from Potion and Tool Pavilion. In this agate star area, we don't participate in any battles. We don't need to care about any force. Jia Duo's visage was arrogant. He clasped his hands while he spoke. Although Potion and Tool Pavilion doesn't join any war or battle of the star area, we do have the power to overturn the situation of this star area. Even if he comes from a stronger force, he won't dare to cause any grudge against us. We don't need to worry about anyone. I don't know why you had to do so. Fu Wei shook her head. Jia Duo looked at her in the eyes. Why you care about him that much? Fu Wei was bewildered. She thought and then said, he helped me. Jia Duo smiled coldly. On my way here, I've heard you repeat his name many times and the frequency was increasing. I can feel that you really appreciate this man. I think it's not a good sign. Taking a deep breath, Jia Duo lowered his voice. You're the hope of our party. Your innate talents are excellent and you have been concentrating always. You have the competence to control Potion and Tool Pavilion in the future. If you let affection distract you, our hope will be drifted away. Fu Wei's eyes became baffled as she said with a surprised countenance. Is that the reason you tried to force him to leave? Jia Duo didn't deny it. I thought that you shouldn't stay with him for a long time. This man could possibly be the Mara in your heart. I'm responsible for cleaning it for you. Fu Wei and An Yoon were astounded. It's unreasonable. You guys are thinking too much. Fu Wei gave a forced smile. I hope so. But we should prevent it early. Jia Duo was persistent. Fu Wei sighed begrudgingly, her face bitter. She became more determined. Senior, that old man is despicable, seriously. He took advantage of you. But instead of saying thanks, he mocked and provoked us. Senior, you're too nice since you didn't get angry. Harumph, if I got angry, I wouldn't have let it go. Shi Yang, Fei Lan, Leona, Ka Tuor, Zhuo Shi, and Xian Ming were staying on a blue-gray asteroid, which was rushing in the dark sea of stars. They were heading to Shadow Ghostly Prison. There were many meteorites moving in this dark outer space, so their asteroid wasn't really eye-catching. Fei Lan used her energy to control it. It didn't fly as fast as the Potion and Tool Pavilion's battleship flew. However, they weren't hurrying. Although their asteroid was slow, the distance to Shadow Ghostly Prison wasn't very long. They didn't waste much time anyway. When they say something you don't like, just leave. We don't need to quarrel with those people. Shi Yang smiled relaxedly. Moreover, he wasn't wrong. We exchanged the cannon for many things. It was a fair trade. I was about to leave. As he was talking impulsively, there could have been a reason for us to leave though. He's right, Fei Lan understood the matter. Potion and Tool Pavilion has a big internal issue. Although Du Lin failed this time, it's not certain that the enemy wouldn't make another move. It's not good if we mingle with them. I think they can't even protect themselves. The next attack may be more furious. It would be perilous if we stayed on that battleship. Leona also nodded. She had prepared to leave already. When Shi Yang countered Du Lin and hurt himself, she thought that it was absolutely not a wise move. Even if we wanted to leave, we should leave confidently and at ease. Now it's like we were enraged, so we left. I don't like it. Ka Tuor shook his head. Apparently, he was annoyed. Along the way, he cursed Jia Duo often with extreme language. He had even insulted 18 of Jia Duo's generations once. You guys are going to Shadow Ghostly Prison for the inheritance of the holy beast Black Tortoise. Do you have any clue about it? Shi Yang didn't bother Ka Tuor and smiled at Swisha. We have no clue. We heard that its body is in Shadow Ghostly Prison. I thought that if we got close enough, I would be able to sense it. Zwisha was serious. She smiled pretty cutely. Shi Yang GG, is there any problem if we follow you? Of course not. But I'm afraid you guys would encounter more dangers. Dangers? What kind of dangers? We also have business at Shadow Ghostly Prison this time. Perhaps we will face the Dark Shadow Clan. I'm afraid unexpected things would happen to you if you follow us. No problem. I think you can handle them well. Zwisha looked livelily beautiful, standing on the asteroid. She was wearing a pure white long dress. She looked very cute and innocent. Anyway, her slender legs made people dream of them. It has been many years and this little girl has grown up to be a charming lady. No wonder why that drifting cloud warrior wanted to harass her. Since her bloodline had the inheritance of water power Upanishad, this power Upanishad was formed naturally within her body. It made her skin exceptionally smooth and soft. Her bearings were pure and gentle. Half a year later, a blue-grey meteorite entered Shadow Ghostly Prison. It was a particular area of Agate Star area that had grey mist covering the area year-round. Starlight in this area was blocked, making it deep, dark, and mysterious. Battles happened unceasingly in Shadow Ghostly Prison. This unique area had many natural resources and races living together. Although most of the tribes here were native, there were several alien tribes from other galaxies. For example, the Dark Shadow Clan. Rumor said that it was a tribe coming from another star area. They understood the concept of space passages, which connected Shadow Ghostly Prison to the other worlds. No one knew where they dwelled. Standing on the asteroid, they curiously watched the darker area in front of them. Perhaps it was because of its particular condition of lacking light, but this place was cold and spooky. They saw a cold water current flowing, but they didn't know where it was headed. Every time it passed by them, they would feel a chill invading deep into their bones, their souls shaking hard. There are so many wrecked battleships in front of us. Fei Lan suddenly lifted up her head and hissed. Swoosh! The blue-grey asteroid accelerated, moving forward like a meteor. On the asteroid, Shi Yang's pupils shrank as he shouted, "There's a fierce battle here." They saw hundreds and then thousands of ruined battleships. They were shattered like crushed stones. Corpses floated in this dark and eerie sea of stars. They belonged to Human Clan, Ghostmark Clan, Monster Clan, Dark Clan, Corpse Clan, and even the Wood Clan and Ice Clan. Those corpses weren't intact. Some were dried and weathered. However, they hadn't been decayed yet due to the cold temperature. Fragments of battleships, broken war chariots, flying carriage, and other vehicles floated and drifted. There were countless pieces like that in this creepy area. Shi Yang's soul consciousness moved like a shuttle and explored the area. There's no aura of living beings. No one is still alive. Shi Yang frowned, his face stern. As soon as they arrived in Shadow Ghostly Prison, they immediately saw an extremely tragic battlefield. These images had impressed them deeply. Shi Yang understood that this place wasn't like any other place. If they were careless, they would become one of those hovering corpses. Everybody put on a heavy-hearted complexion. Chapter 10:12, Dark Shadow Clan. Chapter 10:12, Dark Shadow Clan. On their way, they saw more fragments of battleships and war chariots, and a lot more corpses of warriors from different clans. Shadow Ghostly Prison had battles year-round. It didn't have a peaceful day. This place was the most chaotic area of Agate Star area. Its dwellers got used to wars and bloody battles. Many warriors had experienced hundreds of battles. They all had various fighting experiences. People living in this place were naturally cruel. People who could adapt well were able to survive. There was no principle here aside from power. The realm and competence were the rulers that measured warriors. Senior, Shadow Ghostly Prison is really vast. Without a direction, it's hard to find the target. Ka Tuor felt a little bored standing on the asteroid looking at the floating fragments of battleships nearby. He asked reluctantly, "When will we reach the other end of this place?" They had been traveling for half a month in Shadow Ghostly Prison, always heading forward. They had seen a lot of terrible aftermaths of battles, but they hadn't found any living creature. This dark and desolate sea of stars didn't seem to have anything alive. Gradually, people had become impatient. This dispirited and helpless feeling of being unable to find their target slowly filled their souls. "No hurry. We have a clear direction. It's just that you don't know it." Shi Yang scolded him, standing on the bluish asteroid and looking at the far distance ahead of them. A scarlet drop of blood that looked like a gemstone cracked open. Strange energy fluctuations emerged from it. It was the light that the souls couldn't see that extended towards the corners of this deep area. In just a blink, it could travel billions of miles. Squinting, Shi Yang's eyes sparkled with bloodlight. He had a connection with that drop of blood. The magical energy fluctuated and rippled from him. "We will continue moving forward." He turned to look at Fei Lan. Fei Lan nodded quietly. She didn't say anything, unceasingly pouring more energy into that blue-gray meteorite that they were riding. The rock then flew forward even faster. Zhuo Shi and Xian Ming sat neatly in a corner of the steroid, their breathing steady and deep and eyes closed. They were still cultivating and studying Powers Upanishad. They were using divine crystals to accumulate energy with the hope of advancing further. While their meteorite was dashing, Shi Yang observed Zhuo Shi. He was really amazed. He could see that Zhuo Shi's energy was increasing every day. Although her energy accumulation wasn't as fast as Shi Yang's when he used Devouring Power Upanishad, Zhuo Shi's speed of taking in divine crystals was something that ordinary people couldn't compare. Zhuo Shi's blood contained the true blood of holy beast Black Tortoise. The Black Tortoise was a creature born in the immemorial epoch of Grace Mainland. It had jumped into outer space very early. From some aspect, immemorial creatures were more favored by nature than the God Clan and Demon Clan. Their existences were created by the mysteries of earth and heaven. It seemed like they could understand the nature of their powers right when they started to cultivate it. Each of those creatures had powers that could shatter the world. The holy beast Black Tortoise was the holy spirit of water. Legends said that from the moment it was born, it had gained the subtle power of water. Its bloodline also had the essence of water power, which could be passed on to each generation. However, sometimes this power was weak and sometimes it was very powerful. Xian Ming was from the same race as Black Tortoise, but due to the fact that the inheritance had been passed through many different generations, his bloodline wasn't pure. However, it was unknown why Zhuo Shi had an extremely pure bloodline. Xian Ming felt like he had picked up the top treasure when he found Zhuo Shi. He insisted that Zhuo Shi's blood was the closest to his holy ancestor Black Tortoise. She was the most eligible descendant to inherit the extreme essence of water from Black Tortoise. Frowning and sensing, Shi Yang's countenance was strange. He nodded discreetly. He didn't doubt what Xian Ming had told him about Zhuo Shi's ability anymore. Zhuo Shi was born to cultivate the essence water power Upanishad. Her blood contained the mysterious power Upanishad that made her cultivation have no bottleneck. Her realm was increasing every day, although it was just by a little at a time. This kind of rapid advancement made someone with a speedy progress like Shi Yang admire and appraise. If there were geniuses in this world, Zhuosha was one of them. Compared to her talent, Shi Yang wasn't good enough. Knowing someone was watching her, Zhuosha opened her eyes. When she found that it was Shi Yang, she smiled sweetly. "Why are you looking at me? You are at third sky of King God realm. I want to know when you can enter original God realm." When, Zhuosha thought and then answered him, "It should be short. I think around half a year later, I can break through to original God realm." Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor didn't notice them. However, they became baffled upon hearing Zhuosha. They looked at Zhuosha as if they were watching a monster with astounded faces. They knew that Zhuosha had just reached second sky of King God realm when they were on Fu Wei's battleship. "How long has it been?" And she said that she could reach original God realm within half a year. What kind of cultivating speed was that? Abnormal. Totally abnormal. Fei Lan's team acclaimed in their heads. Quite the contrary, Xian Ming didn't feel strange. He'd accompanied Zhuosha for so many years that he had become numb to her progress a long time ago. He wasn't surprised at all. "Yeah, it's really fast this time. Previously, I couldn't be that fast. When I broke through to another realm, it used to take several years," Zhuosha explained humbly. "It's because of Fu Wei's pellet. She gave me a lot of pellets to cultivate the soul and energy. They are all level 5 or 6 divine grade pellets. Those pellets have helped me accumulate energy really fast. And at the same time, I don't need to worry about the progress of my realm. That's how I naturally break through faster. So when you didn't use pellets, it took several years to break through a realm?" Ka Tuor was baffled. He scratched his head agitatedly. He thought that he was about to collapse. "Yeah, I didn't have pellets, so I just used divine crystals to accumulate energy. Of course, it was really slow," Zhuosha answered earnestly. Ka Tuor dropped his jaw, looking at Zhuosha and then Shi Yang. He couldn't speak for a long time. Fei Lan and Leona were also dumbstruck. "It's the ancient continent though. It has mysteries that we would never be able to imagine. It could nurture such talents." Fei Lan sighed dejectedly, having a feeling of being defeated. Previously, they couldn't understand Shi Yang's miracle in his cultivation. However, they finally understood why Shi Yang didn't have any blockage in accumulating energy since they accompanied him for a long time. They now knew why Shi Yang could cultivate that quickly. But Zhuosha. She was just an ordinary little girl. Without that terrifying devouring power Upanishad, how could she be so unusually talented? The three of them looked at each other, shaking their heads and sighing inwardly. They thought that they would never be able to catch up with these two little monsters. Fu Wei Jejie was really nice. Zhuosha cocked her head, blinking innocently. "When we left the battleship, I saw that she feels so lost. She didn't want it. I think she didn't want us to leave." Shi Yang frowned and didn't say anything. They had traveled a long way afterward. Today, they finally saw some war chariots flying. Those were the butterfly-shaped war chariots, which were flat like shells. Each war chariot had some holes that allowed people to stay. Shi Yang's team could vaguely see many people inside. There were around 10 butterfly-shaped war chariots made of a strange wooden material. They looked light but durable, so they flew really fast. The edges of those war chariots emitted strange light beams of energy. Those butterfly war chariots were heading to a desolate star, which looked like a ruin with many bottomless deep holes running directly into the core of the star. Those in-depth caves released cold air currents. Apparently, it was an abandoned mineral star. Perhaps it was exploited until it was emptied out. 10 butterfly war chariots hissed, descended, and then flew into the deep holes. They released their soul consciousness, extending deep further. Their soul consciousnesses are extraordinary. It's hard to lock them. Fei Lan stood up quietly. Immediately, the asteroid they were riding halted 10,000 meters away from that mineral star. She frowned and said to Shi Yang, "Seems like they're looking for something." They all sent their soul consciousnesses deep inside that mineral star. Shi Yang's visage wasn't pleasant. His eyes became darker as he said, "They are Dark Shadow Clan warriors." Hearing him, Fei Lan and Leona put on cold countenances. Fei Lan took a deep breath, her murderous aura emitting thickly. Are they really members of the Dark Shadow Clan? Butterfly-shaped war chariots, unidentified soul consciousness. They are the features of the Dark Shadow Clan, Shi Yang nodded. I got this information from Fu Wei when I chatted with her. I think we aren't wrong. Fei Lan and Leona looked so cold. They had ferocious and malignant looks when they observed that mineral star. Let's go there and check it out, said Shi Yang indifferently. Fei Lan immediately controlled the meteorite, heading towards the abandoned, desolate mineral star. This mineral star had countless holes. They were like the dark abyss leading to the subterranean world. Cold chi fumed from each hole as if the materials in this mineral stars belonged to the ice class. When they landed on the mineral star, all the butterfly war chariots of Dark Ghost Clan had all disappeared into the holes. Shi Yang quietly sensed for a while. He found that those wisps of roving soul consciousness still seeped deep into the place as if they were trying to find something. We're going down there too. Shi Yang jumped off the asteroid and then plunged into a hole. In their group, Fei Lan had second sky of Ethereal God Realm, but her real fighting competence could compare to peak of Ethereal God Realm. Leona and Ka Tuor were also the kind of warriors that could leap their realms and challenge other higher realm warriors. Shi Yang's competence was somehow immeasurable, anyway. Unless they encountered incipient God Realm existences down there, they wouldn't have to bear much damage. If they were unlucky and faced many peak of Ethereal God Realm experts, Shi Yang had the confidence to move his team to the nearest space node within a blink of an eye. As he was confident, he wasn't fearful. He led his team into the ground. They had pierced through dozens of thousands of meters before the extremely cold subterranean world appeared in their vision. This mineral star had many crystal glacier. It looked like a dreamy icy glass world. The glacier and icicles stood and supported this world, giving it a spacious but empty look. The hissing noise came from the butterfly war chariots which arose from the continuous ice mountains. Roving wisps of soul consciousness raked through the place as if they were trying to find anything alive. After Shi Yang's team got into the icy world underground, their life energies fluctuated clearly. They immediately became the target of the Dark Shadow clansmen. Shortly after, the butterfly war chariots began to fly towards them, shortening the distance between them. Chapter 1013, Proactively Kill. Chapter 1013, Proactively Kill. The three butterfly war chariots approached. They were discernible between the gaps of the icicles. They moved like crying shuttles. One of them dashed over. Instantly, it hovered above an icicle in front of Shi Yang's team. The other two circled, observing like guards that prevented Shi Yang's team from escaping. A face emerged from one of the holes on the butterfly war chariot in front of them. That face looked similar to most of the other creatures from many races. It had eyes, a nose, and a mouth. However, the head of that face was totally different. It looked like an octopus with many tentacles. That creature didn't have hair. Those tentacles, which were more than a meter long, were his hair. His tentacles were brown-gray like his skin color. Each of his tentacles was a little bit bigger than a human thumb. They draped over his shoulder and chest and reached his waist. His tentacles could fly even when there was no wind. This dark shadow warrior wore a set of gray armor that hid behind his tentacles. However, half of his body that protruded from the war chariot looked gentle and slender like a willow catkin. It gave people a feeling that they were floating. Just like his wandering soul consciousness. At first look, Shi Yang could confirm that he was from the Dark Shadow clan. Tentacle-headed, a roving soul consciousness, and a butterfly-shaped chariot were their unique features. He was 100% sure about those creatures' origin when he saw their features. The other half of that Dark Shadow man was still inside the war chariot. His brown-gray eyes moved fast while wisps of his soul consciousness were moving around Shi Yang's team. He frowned as if he had confirmed that they weren't his targets. The man didn't say anything and retreated into his butterfly war chariot. The butterfly war chariot flew away swiftly. It moved far away from this area so quickly that they couldn't see it anymore. They're looking for something. Shi Yang was surprised. It should be someone. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come so quickly when they sensed our life signals. Fei Lan nodded and agreed with him. That man doesn't have a high realm, Leona said with her hoarse voice. Second sky of ethereal god realm, Shi Yang concluded easily. The soul consciousness of the Dark Shadow clan was super sensitive. I heard it's because of the tentacles on their heads. Those disgusting things give them the ability to use soul consciousness to invade the sea of consciousness. They are good at soul fighting, indeed. The Dark Shadow clan has a floating god body. They are fast, but they aren't strong enough. Usually, they won't engage in close combat. It's their weakness. From the moment he had decided to go to Shadow Ghostly Prison, he had learned about everything related to this mysterious clan. From Wu Lan, Fu Wei, and Ghost Hunter, Shi Yang had known about the Dark Shadow clan before he had seen them. He knew their advantages and disadvantages. What should we do? Ka Tuor grinned fiendishly. Are we capable of defeating them? Don't rush. Just watch for a while to assess their general competence. There are around 10 butterfly war chariots entering this place. If each of them has 1 second sky of ethereal god realm expert, we must not act rashly, hissed Shi Yang. I don't think so, Ka Tuor laughed. If they came here with such a strong force, they wouldn't have let us go that easily. I think they perhaps thought that we were troublesome and they didn't want trouble. Fei Lan nodded. Shi Yang chuckled, indeed. Anyway, we still need to make sure about it. We can't be impulsive. I understand. Around 10 butterfly war chariots were roaming between the glacier. They were exploring as their soul consciousnesses raked around the area. Shi Yang's team gathered and quietly moved around the area that the butterfly war chariots were operating. Sometimes, they stopped by the icicles to check. After 1 hour, there are around 50 of them. Each butterfly war chariot has 3 to 5 warriors. They have only 1 second sky of ethereal god realm expert, 2 first sky of ethereal god realm experts, and the rest are at original god realm or king god realm. Shi Yang opened his eyes and spoke to the others while standing on an iceberg. He lowered his voice, we can't defeat them at once. Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor were shocked. They became cold immediately. They knew that Shi Yang had made up his mind. Zhuo Shi and Xian Ming were frightened, looking at him bewilderedly. They were so skeptical. Among this group of 4, Fei Lan was at second sky of ethereal god realm, Leona had first sky of ethereal god realm, while Ka Tuor and Shi Yang were at third sky of original god realm. With these competencies, they wanted to strike the group of Dark Shadow clan. In Zhuo Shi's and Xian Ming's eyes, they were crazy. If they surround us and attack us at once, it will be hard to get out of it safely. As Leona used to be the regimental commander of the Bloody Legion of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, she understood this kind of fighting well. She continued with a fierce face, divide them to attack. We will start with the weakest or the ones that stay furthest from their team. We must do this fast. Once we finish, we must move quickly. We just need to do so 3 or maybe 5 times max and then we can destroy half of their force. Our chance to win will be bigger. We should do it like that. Ka Tuor nodded continually. He used to be the leader of a pirate force. He had his skills in team battles. He thought Leona's tactic was flawlessly perfect. Apparently, it suited them the most. All right. Shi Yang wasn't hesitant at the critical time. He decided the plan, squinting. Wait for a while. First, we will lock the butterfly war chariot that is flying furthest away from the others. He knew that they shouldn't delay. If they wanted to attack the Dark Shadow clan, they had to seize the chance when the others were scattered in their searching mission. Once the Dark Shadow clansmen found their targets, they would gather. If they attacked them at that time, it wasn't different from putting their heads in their fishnet. A flow of soul consciousness with space power moved like an invisible lightning strike between the glacier. High Realm warriors could feel the energy of something moving at breakneck speed. However, since that wisp of soul consciousness had space power, they couldn't lock it. 3 seconds later, Shi Yang opened his eyes. He didn't talk but flew fast towards a general direction. Leona and Ka Tuor didn't hesitate. They turned into a dark light and a grey mist respectively and followed him. Fei Lan slightly frowned. She begrudgingly urged her powers to bring Zhuo and Xian Ming, turning into a pale air current and flying towards a crack in the glacier. A butterfly war chariot was moving around a dark, ice peak. 5 dark shadow warriors had half of their upper bodies protruding from the shell chariot. Their tentacles were moving around while they observed the place with cold, indifferent eyes. In that group of 5 members of the Dark Shadow clan, there was one at 3rd Sky of Original Godrealm Expert, one at 2nd Sky of Original Godrealm, and the other 3 had King Godrealm. When their tentacles touched each other while floating around, they sent electric sparks into the void. It seemed like that was how their soul consciousnesses interacted and how it powered up their sensing powers. The soul consciousness of 3rd Sky of Original God Realm clansmen responded. The Dark Shadow Man shouted, his eyes sparkling. "Someone's here." The other 4 Dark Shadow warriors cheered up. They gathered their soul consciousnesses, contributing energy to each other. Standing behind an ice rock, Shi Yang quietly came closer. He arched his brows, his eyes cold. He could feel the Dark Shadow Man's soul consciousness sensing. Indeed, their sensing powers were terrifying. He had planned to come nearer before striking them. However, they had spotted him earlier. Without hesitation, he attacked instantly when his life signal was discovered. Shi Yang's soul altar spun, urging his refined power Upanishad. 3 electric-like ribbons flashed and then disappeared into thin air. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 cold white bone thorns shot out from a space slit with a power that could crush the void. They grumblingly stabbed the butterfly war chariot. Crack, crack, crack. The impact upon the butterfly war chariot sounded clear and pleasing. It was so tough that it didn't shatter instantly. However, it was blown, spinning aimlessly. The 5 Dark Shadow Men were dizzy. Their bodies were swaying hard on that war chariot. Swoosh. A beam of pale light crossed over. One of the Dark Shadow Men at King Godrealm had a bleeding hole in his neck. His blood was sent away like arrows. Swoosh, swoosh. The white light continued to roar as if it came to take the souls away, which affected the souls severely. The butterfly war chariot was still spinning. The other 4 Dark Shadow Men were panic-stricken. They couldn't help but scream awfully, trying to call their fellow men. Block. A cold and low voice arose like an evil spell. The butterfly war chariot was suspended in their space. Sounds couldn't even pierce through what seemed to be a barrier. The endless darkness had attacked them all of a sudden. The space confining them became so dark that they couldn't even see their own fingers. In that darkness, which was as thick as ink, their soul consciousnesses couldn't navigate. Seeing the darkness fall over them, Shi Yang halted midway. He released his soul consciousness, searching the new target. When Ka Tuor and Fei Lan arrived, he hissed, "Leave it to Leona. We'll attack the new target." Then, he dashed away, disappearing like an arrow. Dash. In a corner of the crystal icy world underground, the 2nd Sky of Ethereal God Realm Expert took out a pocket compass, his face grimaced. The compass had many exquisite lines, expanding around. It showed many spooky green light dots. Each of them represented one of his troops. The compass was his tool to locate his troops. However, the green light dots in his compass had disappeared continually. He knew what it meant when the light dots disappeared. His troopers had their souls connected to the compass. If one of them didn't die utterly, which meant that their soul altars still remained, the light dots wouldn't disappear even if their god bodies were smashed. That light dots represented the life seal of a soul. In another area, the 3 light dots disappear from his compass. The Dark Shadow Expert paled. He hissed, "Stop our searching mission. Send my message asking our fellows to gather here." Immediately, the 2 First Sky of Ethereal God Realm Experts next to him were shaken. They hurried to send the message. "Someone is hunting us down." He took a deep breath, his restless mind gradually calming down. It felt like he had cold water splash away his flames of anger. It's the group of humans we've seen earlier. His 2 troops had eyes as cold as a glacier. They shouted in unison, "They don't know whether they should live or not." Chapter 1014, A Youngster of the Dark Clan. Chapter 1014, A Youngster of the Dark Clan. The ice mountains and glacier glowed fulgently. Deadly sharp icicles were scattered around. Hiding in a crack of the glacier in a corner of this icy world was a short and thin figure, his complexion grave. He gingerly hid his god body in the blind corner of the glacier while lifting his face to peep through the crack above his head. It was a youngster of the Dark Clan. He looked around 15 or 16 years old. He had a pair of dark pupils' eyes, which looked crazy and ruthless as if he was a bloody, insane slaughterer. The murderous aura on his body wasn't something young people at his age should have. His light purple hair was disheveled, covering his forehead and half of his face. The teenager squinted, his face evil. He didn't even blink when watching the butterfly war chariot of the Dark Shadow Clan appear above the crack. This teenager wore simple black warrior clothes, which exposed his arms like iron. His pair of arms had many scars weaving with each other. The scabs of his scars had fallen off a long time ago. Now, they looked like odd snakes. He had been hiding in this glacier for a long time. To avoid the pursuit of the Dark Shadow Clan, he had been hiding all this time. His eyes sparkled with a harsh light. From his angle, he could see a butterfly war chariot moving away from this area. The youngster narrowed his eyes, paying more attention. All of a sudden, that butterfly war chariot exploded. Electric beams and fire burst off everywhere. It was hit severely. The youngster's pupils shrank, his face stiff. Boom! In the burning flame, 3 dark shadow men emerged. They were panic-stricken, shouting crazily. A muscular shadow emerged like lightning. 3 white bone thorns flew out like deadly weapons. They tore space, thrusting towards the 3 dark shadow men. An old woman with a lot of facial wrinkles appeared all of a sudden. She extended her hand, grabbing the void. 5 pallid threads shot out. They moved as if they could erode everything. They entered the god bodies of the 3 dark shadow men. As the teenager was watching, the 3 dark shadow men were weakened rapidly. Their bones exploded as the threads pierced through their skins. They were bleeding badly. A mysterious and yet evil black hole appeared, floating around. A powerful suction force fiercely came from that black hole and swallowed the soul altars of the 3 dark shadow warriors. The teenager felt very chilled. He was frightened. He then hid deeper and more carefully as he was afraid that the others could sense him. The young man hovering above the crack recalled the 3 bone thorns. They turned into 3 beams of white light and disappeared into his sleeves. That young man was nonchalant as he looked around. His cold eyes suddenly looked in the youngster's general direction. The youngster was shaken. He had a strange feeling that the man had sensed him. His heart sank into the abyss. That young man seemed to know that he was hiding under the crack of the iceberg. However, he didn't do anything as he frowned, nodded to the old woman, and disappeared. The dead bodies of the 3 dark shadow warriors shriveled and dried up as if water and blood in their bodies were all sucked up. This looked extremely odd. The fragments of the butterfly war chariot fell grumblingly on the ice above the youngster's head, echoing clearly. The youngster felt tense. He hesitated for a while and then hurried to move through the ice cracks. He knew he was revealed. As he was afraid that the young man would use some malicious attacks, he instinctively moved to avoid. He had pierced through the ice cracks for a long time like a fast shuttle. After he felt relatively safe, he stopped and recalled the moment he had peeked at the others. He didn't know why he felt something towards that young man and the old woman. It seemed strange to him, anyway. Vaguely, he felt like he had some connection with those 2, but he didn't know what it was. It was just his pure intuition. The teenager frowned, considering things inside the glacier. He hesitated whether or not he should go there and check. Was someone down there lately? Fei Lan looked at Shi Yang and asked uncertainly after they had left that area. She released the pale air current, covering Zhuo Shi and Xian Ming. Yeah, I spotted life energy fluctuate down there. It was hidden. If I didn't cultivate death and life power Upanishad, I wouldn't have been able to spot it. Shi Yang nodded. That was a member of the Dark Clan, I suppose. The Dark Clan has a profound understanding of soul power. They are good at hiding soul aura and things. Perhaps that one was the target of the Dark Shadow Clan's troop. Why didn't you force him out? Fei Lan was surprised. Our target is the Dark Shadow Clan. We don't need to cause more trouble. Shi Yang shook his head, frowning. They know us too. It's not easy to ambush them anymore. It seems like we have to take real action. Yeah, we can't ambush anymore, Fei Lan frowned. We should wait for Leona and Ka Tuor. 3 minutes later. 2 shadows appeared with thick, murderous auras. Blood was still dripping from their fingers. Evidently, they had just murdered someone. Their hands smelled like fresh blood. We hunted them one more time, Ka Tuor grinned. Once they engage in close combat, the Dark Shadow Clansmen are limited. It's the 5th time, though. However, we can't find more scattered members. They are gathering by that expert. Fei Lan pointed to a direction, her voice mournful. That place. Leon and Ka Tuor looked at Shi Yang. Since Fei Lan's man and Leona's father were confined by the Dark Shadow Clan, the resentment they had for that clan was carved into their bones. And that clan also killed the king of demonic insects, devouring gold silkworm, and the Holy Spirit god. If Shi Yang had a chance to avenge them, he wouldn't let it slip away. From Fu Wei, he knew that Zhuo Lu, the great elder of Potion and Tool Pavilion, also had a close connection to the Dark Shadow Clan, and he knew that this clan came from another galaxy. The resentment Fei Lan, Leona, and Shi Yang felt, the chance they had to slaughter a troop of the Dark Shadow Clan, and the opportunity to ask them where the Dark Shadow Clan imprisoned their loved ones were enough to support this massacre. The strong warriors of the opponents are still fine. The 3 ethereal god realm experts are staying with each other. We aren't afraid of battling them, however, we may get injured afterward. Shi Yang wore a cold face. He considered for a while and then turned to face a direction. He said, perhaps we may try to use an available bait. Fei Lan's eyes brightened as she understood his idea. She agreed immediately, we can try once. Leona, Ka Tuor, Xian Ming, and Zhuo didn't know what they meant and just looked at them. Over there, Fei Lan pointed at a glacier. The one that the Dark Shadow Clan wants to find is there. He's hiding in the cracks of the glacier. If he moves, the Dark Shadow Clan will detect his aura immediately. They will go after him. Once they continue their investigation, their formation will be dismissed, and we will have a chance again. Should we force him to move? Ka Tuor laughed. Right, Shi Yang pointed at the exact location of the teenager and said, you go there and pound the ice underground. I think he's hiding in there. He must use his energy to move. Once he does that, the Dark Shadow Clan will find him immediately. When that happens. Got it. Ka Tuor was excited. He smiled evilly as he dashed away. Boom, boom, boom. Shortly after, they heard the noise of the ice shattering. Ka Tuor used his energy to attack the icicles over there. The several thousand-meter glacier cracked as it got hit. The teenager hiding in the crack of the glacier grimaced. He was foul-mouthed. However, he could only move around like a little mouse piercing through the ice. His energy burst out and his life magnetic field was exposed. I'm going there to force him to run. Once he leaves, the Dark Shadow Clan will chase after him with all their forces. In such an operation, the war chariots can't fly at the same speed. The battle line will be elongated. You two know what to do, said Shi Yang to Fei Lan and Leona. The other 2 nodded with heavy, murderous auras. It's possible that they end up sending a strong team here while the others stay put. It's the best case anyway. Shi Yang had a clear thought. If they send their strongest force, I'll hide so they won't see me. After you're done, come over there and find me. The other 2 nodded again. Shi Yang talked to Zhuo and Xian Ming, come with me. Xian Ming and Zhuo quietly followed him. Dash. The butterfly war chariots of the Dark Shadow Clan gathered between 3 glacier in a fan formation. The second sky of ethereal god realm expert's face darkened while staying in his chariot in the center of their formation. He said, found him. He thought for a while and then said resolutely, I'm going there directly. You guys stay here and don't scatter. The Dark Shadow warriors on the other war chariots regarded him and said that they understand. One of the hovering butterfly war chariots flew away as fast as lightning. Inside the glacier's crack, the youngster was dashing fast. His face grimaced more, his brutal eyes watching over his head, sparkling with malicious light. Ka Tuor laughed wildly and continued to release his energy. The crazy, chaotic energy shot out madly, grumblingly pounding on the ice above the youngster's head. The youth was so enraged. He didn't know what kind of mental disorder that madman up there had. Why did he suddenly change his target and aim at me? He must hide away or else that madman would hit him. But if he released his energy, his life magnetic field would appear and the Dark Shadow Clansman would find him. Considering between getting instantly damage or being caught by the Dark Shadow Clansman, he determinedly chose the former. He continued to rush while sending his regards to Ka Tuor's family's 18 generations. While he ran madly, the young man who he had just seen with an old man and a lady emerged. That young man smiled, but his eyes didn't smile as he glanced at the area where the teenager was hiding underground. He mocked, "Get up here. Don't you think it's annoying?" The teenager felt chilled as if a venomous snake was staring at him and he couldn't get away. "I don't want to kill you. I just want to use as bait. Come out. Don't make me force you," said Shi Yang with squinted eyes. The youngster struggled in his mind. He used some other soul skills, but he found that he couldn't get rid of the other's soul blockade. As he couldn't help it, he emerged from the glacier with a pale face. His hair was a mess of crushed ice. He was so enraged as he said, "What do you want after all?" "Help you survive this dilemma." Shi Yang chuckled, generating his god domain and covering Ka Tuor, the youngster, Zhuoshu, and Xian Ming. The space around them rippled magnificently as dazzling light emitted around Shi Yang. Shortly after, they disappeared into the void inside the glacier, leaving not even a single beam of an aura. Chapter 10:15, We seem to have some relations. Chapter 10:15, We seem to have some relations, _ A thin curtain like a steam with space ripples covered Shi Yang's group. The teenager was still cautious, maintaining a distance from Shi Yang with eyes filled with anger. Then, he turned and looked at the ice crystal opposite to them. He became totally baffled. That ice crystal was smooth and flat like a mirror, which reflected everything clearly. However, he couldn't see his image reflected in it even though he was facing that mirror ice crystal. Any creature with a body would be reflected in the mirror. It was the rule of nature that people couldn't break. However, they were standing in front of the ice crystal and that crystal didn't reflect their images. And he could still see that crystal. This observation made the youngster realize something. He quieted down. "Don't worry. As long as you don't roll away, the Dark Shadow Clansmen can't find you even if they come here." Shi Yang smiled, looking at him. Pondering for a while, he said, "I'm Shi Yang. I'm also an enemy of the Dark Shadow Clan. We're like partners here. What's your name? Why are the Dark Shadow Clansmen hunting you down?" Shi Yang didn't know why he had a soft spot for this youngster. He couldn't describe this feeling. It seemed like he had a close connection with this youth subconsciously. This kid had so many cuts on his arms and his body had a madly destructive aura. To other people, he looked extreme and evil. To Shi Yang, he felt comfortable and relaxed seeing him. "I'm Benny," snorted the teenager. His manner was still distant. Benny, nodding and smiling, Shi Yang continued asking, "Why do the Dark Shadow Clan want to kill you?" "It has nothing to do with you." The teenager put on a cold face, glaring at Shi Yang. His eyes were filled with wicked resentment as if he hated all the people in this world. "Kid, you don't know how to live, right?" Ka Tuor grinned fiendishly. "Kid, do you want to die? Answer when you're asked. If you dare lie, you will face the consequences." Benny snorted, turned his face away. He didn't want to look at Ka Tuor. Ka Tuor's face stiffened. He was enraged. He smiled evilly as he was about to give the youth a lesson. "All right, it's okay if he doesn't want to tell us." Shi Yang rose his hand to stop Ka Tuor. Shi Yang had an unknown feeling for that youth, so he didn't want Ka Tuor to bully him. That was why he stopped the man. Ka Tuor glared at the youth, smiling coldly. But he stopped there. Swoosh, swoosh. The engine started to hiss. Shortly after, they saw a butterfly war chariot landing. The war chariot carried 3 dark shadow men. They were the strongest warriors of this group. One was at second sky of ethereal god realm and the other 2 were at first sky of ethereal god realm. The 3 dark shadow clansmen had half of their bodies protruding from the war chariot while the other half stayed inside. Their cold eyes were raking through the area, releasing soul consciousness to search. As Benny saw the 3 dark shadow men, his face became as cold and malicious as a sharp blade. He spat, cursing wholeheartedly, "Damn those hounds." Although he was cursing them, his face was anxious and restless. He was afraid that the 3 dark shadow warriors could spot him. His nerves were tense as he was prepared to attack in any minute. Shi Yang glanced at him. He frowned as he had a plan. The 3 dark shadow experts at ethereal god realm drove their war chariot around. They gradually became impatient. Their drifting soul consciousness scattered, covering the entire area. Benny quietly accumulated his energy. He was ready to run at any minute. His malignant eyes gazed at the 3 dark shadow clansmen. He was here. How can he disappear so strangely like that? The leader at second sky of ethereal god realm shouted, his voice sharp and cold. Yeah, it's true that he was here. The other 2 answered, nodding to indicate that the direction they senses was also here. Inside the light curtain, Benny's, a teenager from the Dark Clan, eyes brightened. He was standing just 100 meters from the Dark Ghost clansmen. It seemed like they could reach him with their arms quickly. With their soul ability, they should have been able to find and capture him. Their soul consciousnesses scattered and searched for a long time and yet they hadn't found him. The 3 dark shadow experts seemed to be blind. Benny wasn't a fool. He contemplated and then he figured it out something. He looked at Shi Yang, prying, "Space power Upanishad?" Shi Yang smiled and nodded. The youngster calmed down. He didn't look at the 3 dark shadow men anymore. He sat down, facing Shi Yang and Ka-Tuor. He still maintained a distance from them while taking out a divine crystal to recover his energy. He looked a little relaxed. Not good. The leader of the dark shadow troops discolored as he stared at the compass in his hand. He shouted, "We were tricked." The other 2 dark shadow men glared at the compass in the other's hand. Their faces incomparably grimaced. The light dots in his compass blinked and then disappeared one after another. Within less than 1 minute, 5 light dots disappeared. It meant that the soul altars of their fellows had been utterly destroyed. Fei Lan and Leona were at ethereal god realm. They had the ability to challenge higher realm warriors. Their hands were soaked in blood as their fighting experiences were vast. The 2 of them had attacked the other troops all of a sudden. With the power of their malicious powers Upanishads, it was easy to make the Dark Shadow clansmen pay a bloody price within a short time. Looking at their fearful complexions, Shi Yang knew that Fei Lan and Leona succeeded and that they were killing the others. With their deeds, Fei Lan and Leona could smash the warriors who were at ethereal god realm. The gap of 1 whole realm wasn't something that could be made up. Those Dark Shadow clansmen didn't have ethereal god realm. At this moment, they were like sheep waiting to be slaughtered. They were killed rapidly. Seeing that the situation wasn't going right, the 3 Dark Shadow experts retreated like lightning. They didn't care about this area anymore. At this moment, they realized that they had fallen into their enemy's trap, a typical luring the tiger from its domain in the mountain strategy. Shortly after, the butterfly war chariot disappeared from their sight. He extended his hand and made a cut. It looked like he had torn space and drawn a hole in the light curtain. The cold air from outside flooded in, making people shiver. The youngster shuddered. He gawked at his image reflected in the ice crystal. He knew that he had walked out of the confined space. He looked at Shi Yang, asking, "I don't have any business here, right?" He understood clearly that he was used as bait. Now, they wouldn't want to keep him anymore as the others had got what they wanted. Ka-Tuor waved his hand. He couldn't help but shout at him, "Get lost. As far as possible. Or else, the remaining Dark Shadow clansmen won't spare your life." Benny had a beam of malignant light in his eyes. He glared at Ka-Tuor and then jumped into the crack of the ice underneath. He swayed and then disappeared. Shi Yang chuckled, that kid runs really fast. He's not ordinary as he was able to avoid the Dark Shadow Clan's pursuit until now. That kid is unusual. I don't know why I like him when I see him. I can't describe this feeling. Hey! Ka Tuor was shaken. He couldn't hold it, saying, Senior, you have this feeling too? Shi Yang was bewildered. What do you mean? Although I was foul-mouthed to him and I threatened him, I don't know why I also like this kid. I felt comfortable with him. It's like when I stay with you, Senior, or with Madame Leona and Precursor Fei Lan. I would instinctively consider treating him as someone in my family. Right. It's that feeling. I instinctively considered him as one of us. Ka Tuor didn't explain clearly. His wording was a little vague, indeed. However, Shi Yang understood his idea clearly. He became perplexed. The light sparkled in his eyes while he contemplated. After a while, Shi Yang suddenly gave a low shout. Benny. The crispy noise of broken ice echoed from the crack underneath. They could hear staggering footsteps. That teenager was extremely flustered. Shi Yang was surprised. He smiled naturally. Come here. He had known for a long time that this youngster had only third sky of King God realm. His competence was nothing special. However, his life was tough as he could survive the Dark Shadow Clan's pursuit. Of course, the reason why the Dark Shadow Clan couldn't kill him was because of his exceptional ability to conceal his life magnetic field. He could even avoid the sensitive Dark Shadow Clansmen. However, his powers of concealing the soul couldn't work on Shi Yang, the one who cultivated life power Upanishad. When the teenager heard Shi Yang shout for him, the reluctant and dispirited feeling when the soul was confined emerged in his heart once again. He was so infuriated, but he didn't have a solution for this. He emerged from the crack of the iceberg. His rage boiled his mind as he grunted. What else do you want? More bait. I remember you all. Shi Yang's bright eyes lay on the mess of his hair covering his forehead, asking all of a sudden. Wipe out the hair on your forehead. I want to see your glabella. The teenager shuddered, his eyes very frightened. He had a madly destructive aura on his body, which was about to explode like an erupting volcano. His aura rolled torrentially as if he had fallen into a disordered state of mind. Ka Tuor was shocked. As he recalled something, his eyes became incomparably hot. He stammered, Senior, you mean? He and we are. Shi Yang didn't answer Ka Tuor. He was still looking at the youngster earnestly. His eyes gazed at the glabella covered under the teenager's hair. He didn't even blink. The destructive energy fluctuations on the boy's body became thicker. His eyes were filled with crazy thoughts. He said through his gritted teeth, his face malicious, Are you the hounds of the God clan too? Shi Yang took a deep breath to steady his restless mind. He told the youngster calmly, Never mind. I got it. You don't need to do anything. You should go with us now. We'll defeat these dark shadow troops first. Then, we'll talk. Our origins are related in some way. The dark youngster looked shocked. The madly destructive intention in his eyes disappeared slowly, his face perplexed. Our origins? Shi Yang smiled brightly and nodded in confirmation. He said, Yeah, we are related somehow. But we have to put it aside for a while. Right now, we should finish our business first. Chapter 1016. Break the Ice. Chapter 1016. Break the Ice. What Shi Yang called business was killing people. A big beam of starlight carried Ka Tuor, Xian Ming, Zhuo Shi, and Benny forward like a ribbon at breakneck speed. After fewer than 10 minutes, they arrived at the gathering point of the Dark Shadow Clan. Fragments of the butterfly war chariots were scattered everywhere in the glacier with the dead bodies of the Dark Shadow Clansmen. They all had tragic deaths. The ones Fei Lan had killed had their bodies eroded inside, leaving only skin bags that covered the bodies as their internal organs and bones were now a mess of bloody paste. The dead bodies with dark and fearful eyes were the work that was done by Leona. They also had darkness covering their bodies. The 3 ethereal god realm experts of the Dark Shadow Clan were urging their powers Upanishad, their soul consciousness roving and their faces pale. They were attacking Fei Lan and Leona together with a circle of 7 original God Realm Dark Shadow clansmen. They had also used their powers Upanishads, which released ice, thunderbolts, fire snakes, and sharp gusts. They were screaming and shouting at Fei Lan and Leona. The 3 leaders of the Dark Shadow Troop hissed and screeched ear-splittingly. They cultivated fire, ice, and lightning respectively. The ethereal extents of their powers Upanishad rolled torrentially with energy. While they were fighting Fei Lan and Leona, their energy shot out, piercing the ice, turning the icicles into power and scattering around like snow. Although Leona and Fei Lan looked a bit strenuous battling the 3 ethereal God Realm experts and the other 7 original God Realm warriors, they were still moving swiftly. This was until they saw Shi Yang riding the starlight. Fei Lan's and Leona's tense nerves finally relaxed. Fei Lan touched a spot in the void above her head. Countless ash-grey dragons made of corrosive air began to move around, twisting their bodies dangerously. The pale, erosive air currents contained unpredictably vicious power. When the wandering soul consciousness of the Dark Shadow Troopers touched her pallid air current, they felt so painful as their soul energies were drained rapidly. At this moment, Leona looked like a dark sun. The area around her was pitch black. Layers of dark energy rose like a raging flood. Her darkness seemed to be able to cover the brightly lit world. Fei Lan and Leona had the competencies to challenge the warriors whose realm was higher than theirs. While they were battling 10 Dark Shadow clansmen, their unique powers Upanishad had performed their advantages well. The 10 Dark Shadow warriors couldn't approach them. Leona's darkness could shield most of the energy attacks from the different powers Upanishad as it blinded and preventing them from finding the targets. Even if they were sensitive, the Dark Shadow warriors couldn't lock Leona's position in the darkness. They couldn't even see their own fingers. If they couldn't lock her down, their powerful attacks would fail. It was a frustrated feeling when their attacks hit the void. You guys should deal with the 7 troopers below Ethereal God Realm. Shi Yang grabbed something in the void and his starlight condensed into a big block of dazzling light. He notified Ka Tuor, Xian Ming, and Zhuosha while space power was mobilized in his body. Shi Yang disappeared shortly after. People couldn't see him as if he had gone to another dimension. Leave it to me. Ka Tuor's face was ferocious as he flew like a demogon. His power Upanishad rose torrentially, attracting and dragging pieces of ice and war chariot fragments towards his body. Together, they created a disorderly and chaotic magnetic field. Squinting, Ka Tuor's eyes had a bloodthirsty gleam. Wherever his big hand pointed at, the fragments of war chariots and broken icicles attacked it instantly. Those fragments moved like tornadoes, colliding with each other. Explosions and breaking noises arose like rattling heavy rain. The debris was now empowered by his chaos power Upanishad. Under his sole command, everything shot out thickly. The 7 original God Realm warriors surrounding them paled. They immediately changed their target. All now tried to resist Ka Tuor's attack. Zhuosha exhaled. Her white and soft hands made magical hand seals in the air. The melted glacier gathered, creating a sparkling pool with marvelous water waves. Those water waves then acted as a barrier that shielded the energy attack and protected her, Xian Ming, and Benny. Benny was surprised. He frowned, mumbling to himself, "I don't need your protection." Crack. Crack, crack. Benny's bones sounded as if someone was frying beans. A destructive aura shot up into the sky from his head. Benny's eyes were mad and brutal as if he had entered a magical domain. He became heartless and bloodthirsty like a beast with its basic instinct of killing. He crossed the wall made of water directly. Destructive energy rolled from him. Benny roared like a beast or a devil god wanting to destroy the world in his rage. He stormed towards a first sky of original God Realm Dark Clan warrior. The Dark Clan warrior seemed to know how dangerous he was. Seeing him coming, he was terrified. Benny had only 3rd sky of King God Realm cultivation base. However, the destructive energy fluctuated around him was enough to tear the whole sky when he released his god domain. Such energy fluctuations burst off like thunderclaps. Fragments of wrecked war chariots and pieces of ice automatically exploded within his god domain. His energy could destroy everything. A dark blue stone carved with many exquisite symbols emerged in his palm. Swoosh! The stone roared, transforming fast. Gradually, it became a massive meteorite with many archaic, unknown symbols. That rock had a blood color mark in the center, which was glowing immensely. It seemed to be the source of destructive energy of the rock. In just a blink, a small rock became a several hundred-meter mountain. It looked old but tough in an oval shape and was filled with devastating power. Benny touched his glabella. A flow of evil aura flooded that magical meteorite. The blood-colored mark in the center of the rock burst off with energy, sending countless archaic symbols away. The evil aura permitted the area. Boom! That meteorite pounded on that first sky of original God Realm warrior. This man had tried his best to resist, but he looked so weak under the massive rock. Boom! Boom! Although the rock hadn't touched his head yet, the pressing, earth-destroying aura had acted earlier. This man was blown off. Blood trickled from 7 holes in his face as that tremendous energy smashed him. Swoosh! The meteorite fell like an imposing mountain. That warrior was pounded into a mess of blood. His body was smashed and his blood was diffusing like mist. Benny's dark purple eyes were filled with bloodthirsty intentions. He acted as if he had fallen into bedevilment. His evil, devastating aura twirled around his body as he continually controlled the strange rock that bombarded the Dark Shadow experts. He made some original God Realm warriors helter-skelter. Swoosh! 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 The 3 electric spears flashed and then disappeared by the meteorite. They then suddenly stabbed one of the first sky of ethereal God Realm experts in his back. They were moving fiercely with space energy added. That man felt something as he turned around strongly, his god body frozen rapidly. In just a blink of an eye, he had a thick ice layer covering him entirely, his eyes cold and dark. Boom! 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 The bone thorns thrust onto the ice armor on his back, drilling 3 holes. The man was blown away. He hurried to condense many ice walls in front of him, each of them 10 meters thick. As he cultivated ice power Upanishad, the environment here had boosted his power. He was also the one who had struggled against Fei Lan and Leona a lot. He had revived the glacier around, shooting 100-meter-long icicles towards them. He gave Leona and Fei Lan a headache. In an environment that's suitable to the power Upanishad of a warrior, his competence significantly increased. In this world of ice, that expert had only first sky of ethereal God Realm. However, the power he could perform could be more than his colleagues at second sky of ethereal God Realm. The glacier around could provide him with energy, ice beams, icicles, ice sabers, and more. Under his control, they were extremely dangerous. To defend, he could condense a thick ice wall instantly. To attack, he could use a long and sharp icicle. In this area, he was the toughest warrior of the Dark Shadow clan to deal with. Shi Yang discreetly came to this place and his first target was that man. Layers of ice walls were built. They looked thick and sparkling. The man was hiding behind his walls, his face cold as he curled his lips into a contemptuous smile, only at third sky of original God Realm. You come to see your death, eh? More than 10 ice beams of around 100 meters glistened. They were sharp like spears, shooting out from the ice walls. They were so fiercely strong that they could break everything as they darted towards Shi Yang. The 3 bone thorns moved around. Shi Yang calmly looked at him and said deliberately, I am aiming at you because I can kill you. His soul altar slowly spun. His co-soul with the origin could control the energy of his body. His co-soul now looked like a fiery ball. Instantaneously, Shi Yang became a man-torch. Fire burst out from his body scorchingly like fire dragons. This kind of top-young fire was able to burn the whole world down. As his co-soul had merged with the origin, he had the magical abilities of 10 heaven flames he could use as he pleased. The blazing heaven flame was released. At that moment, he looked like a flaming sun. Fire dragons were sent out of his body one after another. They melted the 10 icicles in just a blink. More and more fire dragons roared and flew towards the thick ice walls. The thick ice walls melted rapidly at a speed that people could observe with naked eyes. The steam permeated the place while the man was screeching painfully. Ice power was his primary energy. Each of the ice walls and ice beams he had released had a wisp of his pure soul. He used his soul to adjust and control the power. When the ice walls and ice beams burned, it also hurt his soul, making him helter-skelter distressed. While the ice walls were melting, the blood vein ring on Shi Yang's finger flashed. A broadsword appeared in the bloodlight. A 100-meter-long bloodlight with a thick blood scent drew a beautiful yet peculiar curve in the air when it hacked on the crystal-clear ice. Along with the grumbling noise of an iceberg scattering, people heard someone screaming tragically. The big eyes on the sword opened. A vicious aura was released, sending negative moods directly into people's hearts. It flooded fast like a rising tide, covering that area entirely. Chapter 1017, The Shocking Secret. Chapter 1017, The Shocking Secrets. The icicles exploded in the middle of the ice wall. The negative moods surged torrentially from the broadsword, covering the dark shadow warrior who cultivated ice power. That man looked confused. His mind was invaded shortly after. Swish. His god body was cut off by a brutal bloodlight. It was divided into 2 pieces and was completely broken. At this moment, Shi Yang brought his sword and walked over to search for something. In the middle of the crushed ice, he placed his hand on that man's head. Crack, crack. His skull was broken. A confining energy shrouded his broken skull, restraining his soul altar from flying away from his head. It was trapped inside his skull. His god bod was destroyed, but his memory and cognition still remained for a short time. As long as the soul altar didn't get away from his skull, he was still able to reason. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Invisible space sabers moved like shuttles in his head and twisted his sea of consciousness into a mess like a fabric ball, which prevented him from gathering his consciousness. A wisp of Shi Yang's soul consciousness directly entered his head, searching in the memory locus. Each brain had a seal of memory that stored the whole life experience. Each wisp of memory represented an experience of that person. As long as the soul altar didn't move, those wisps of memory lived forever. They wouldn't disappear. What Shi Yang was doing was extracting his memory. His soul consciousness moved like tentacles that searched through the man's wisps of memory. The memory of the dark shadow warrior was like a cocoon that Shi Yang was holding and pulling it open. The hidden secrets in his mind were open to Shi Yang. Placing one hand on that man's skull, Shi Yang searched through his memory. His face became stern and then he grimaced. After a long time, Shi Yang opened his eyes, patting his hand. Crack, crack. The man's skull exploded. As soon as his soul altar flew out, Shi Yang's black hole had swallowed it at once. Watching here and there, he found that the battle was over while he wasn't paying attention. Fei Lan and Leona had killed their opponents. Ka Tuor, Benny, Zhuo, and Xian Ming had also fished the other original God Realm Dark Shadow Warriors. Ka Tuor and Benny had done almost everything. Zhuo and Xian Ming just offered them a little help. The energy of the dead gathered, congregating in Shi Yang's acupuncture points. However, he didn't look happy at all. Quite the contrary, he had a solemn complexion. Fei Lan and Leona quietly gathered, frowning as they looked at him. After a long time, Shi Yang had finished absorbing the essence qi of the dead around him. He took a deep breath and said strenuously, "The Dark Shadow Clan is a vassal clan of the God Clan." Fei Lan and Leona changed their countenances. They had a gleam of fear in their eyes. The holder of the blood mark, of course, had no good attitude for the God Clan. That perfect clan, who called themselves gods, had piles of acts of genocide in the Big Star areas. They had killed countless people. The God Clan used to visit Raging Flame Star area. They had even left their inheritance too. Leona, Fei Lan, and Ka Tuor had known the God Clan's conspiracy. They had considered warriors of Raging Flame Star area as pigs or sheep that they've been raising in pens. They had imparted them powers Upanishad just to make the creatures there stronger. However, it was the same reasoning as feeding the animals to fatten them. Once they had grown and their realms had reached a certain level, The God Clan would select excellent warriors and absorb their flesh and energy to benefit the God Clan's members. The gifts of the God Clan to Raging Flamestar area were just to benefit themselves later. After Raging Flamestar area had grown to a specific level, they would come to harvest and choose the top strong warriors for themselves. This could be seen in God Perishing Land. The wounded warriors of the God Clan stayed in the center of the stone steles with demonic flowers to absorb blood and energy to heal themselves and recover from their wounds. Hearing that the Dark Shadow Clan was the hound of the God Clan, Phelan and Leona became tense. The grudge they had against the Dark Shadow Clan grew deeper. The God Perishing Land used to confine an expert of the bloodthirsty. His blood had been continuously absorbed through the evil chains. Ge Lu, the expert who cultivated Chaos Power Upanishad, had escaped that place, but he couldn't escape his kalpa later. His soul altar was broken, but he had managed to leave his inheritance. The bloodthirsty kept the resentment towards the God Clan to its bones. I'd just extracted his memory. Shi Yang paled, his voice unnatural. The Dark Shadow Clan is the guard to the God Clan. They help the God Clan make a passage to another galaxy. The Dark Shadow Clan has a special physique, which helped them survive the chaotic space basin. They usually connect two star areas, facilitating the God Clan's invasion. Between two star areas, there would usually be a very thick barrier, which the God Clan's experts couldn't break through easily. The Dark Shadow Clan was in charge of this mission. When the God Clan wanted to invade a star area, the Dark Shadow Clan would be the vanguard. They spent the time to clean the barrier between two star areas, so the force of the God Clan could arrive after them easily. Through the memory of this Dark Shadow expert, Shi Yang knew that the space barrier connecting Agate Star area and God Star area was about to be clear after thousands of years of their labor. This man used to work in that barrier area. He used a special tool to dig through a small area of the chaotic space basin. Many Dark Shadow clansmen had to do the combing work before they became strong enough to do other works. It was some kind of training to them. From that man's memory, this was the first time Shi Yang knew that Godstar area was the cradle of the God Clan and also where their headquarters were based. Godstar area had an ancient continent, which still existed until now. In that area, the God Clan had developed their powers Upanishad to the acme. Each great family of the God Clan was so powerful and intimidating. The heads of the 12 formidable families were at third sky of incipient God realm. Also, they had dozens of first sky and second sky of incipient God realm experts as the pillars of the families. The total number of experts at incipient God realm of the God Clan was more than 100. They also had countless original God realm and ethereal God realm warriors. Together, they had created the prosperous glory prestige of Godstar area. Each family of the 12 great families controlled 1 to 3 different star areas. They had so many life stars and mineral stars. They transported countless kinds of bulk materials to Godstar area from the other areas daily to nurture the greatest monster, the God Clan of Godstar area. The God Clan had many vassals. The Dark Shadow Clan was just one of them. The God Clan was like a malignant tumor, crazily invading big star areas. The experts of the star area, which this clan had laid its eyes on, had only 2 options: die or become their hounds to serve the great 12 families in invading the new star area. That was how they could survive. God Clan had laid their eyes on the entire universe. Rumors said that half the star areas in this universe were invaded. The God Clan had a unique method called the Seed when they planned to invade a remote but valuable life star. After the members of the God Clan died, they could refine their souls through a blood sacrifice and be reborn as a life seed. This kind of life seed could travel through the galaxies faster than the fastest battleships. One life seed could move like a meteor in outer space. Once it fell on a life star in a remote, faraway galaxy, it could gather earth and heaven energy to grow slowly into a clansman of the God Clan. The life seeds would grow fast in those extrasolar life stars and they would invade the place. If the life star had strong native dwellers, the God warriors would connect to their families and ask them to send more experts. Using this method, the 12 great families of the God Clan in Godstar area had forcefully invaded many life stars away from Godstar area. In that man's memory, The method called Life Seed had shocked Shiyang. He finally knew why Grace Mainland had God Clan. He could confirm that the God Clan members in Grace Mainland that year were the life seeds that had moved through many space barriers to land and grow there. However, in the end, the other 9 clans of Grace Mainland had expelled them, which ended their invasion. After the ancient time and antiquity time, the god warriors descended the Life Star and escaped from there. They knew that Grace Mainland wasn't worth sending more troops to invade because its energy was about to run out soon. It wasn't worth their second invasion and travel of thousands of miles away for a dying planet. Also, Shiyang now knew that Grace Mainland wasn't the homeland of the God Clan. The God Star in God Star area was their cradle. The more he knew about the God Clan, the heavier his mood became. Facing the race that called themselves gods, it was the first time Shiyang had a helpless and dispirited feeling. There were more than 100 incipient God Realm experts, countless ethereal God Realm, original God Realm, and King God Realm experts. Each family of the God Clan had the ability to destroy an entire star area. This kind of power was enough to dominate the whole universe. This time, they laid their eyes on Agate Star area. To be exact, only a family of the God Clan named Ascot was plotting against Agate Star area. The Ascot family was one of the 12 great families of God Clan. 10,000 years ago, they had assigned Dark Shadow Clan to go to this place and clear the space barrier. From the memory of that man, Shiyang got news that had terrified him badly. The Dark Shadow Clan and Great Elder of Potion and Tool Pavilion had made an agreement. Zhuo Lu had officially submitted to the God Clan. Zhuo Lu was utilizing all of his forces to get the Pavilion Master position. He wanted to use Potion and Tool Pavilion to raise the storm of war in Agate Star area. He would make the prominent clans of Agate Star area attack and kill each other. Then, the clans of Agate Star area wouldn't unite to deal with it due to their resentment when the Ascot family came. The Ascot family was one of the 12 great families of the God Clan. It had 9 incipient God Realm experts. However, it was a little bit strenuous if this family wanted to eat Agate Star area in one bite. This clan wanted to claim Agate Star area exclusively. They didn't want to use the power of the other families. Thus, they had planned on using the superpower position of Potion and Tool Pavilion to disorder the entire star area. Then, they could come and clean the battle sites at ease. The memory of this Dark Shadow expert contained shocking secrets, which had shaken Shiyang hard. It was the first time he knew the real competence of the God Clan. Now he had pressure like a mountain hanging above his heart. His mood was down and was sinking into the bottomless abyss. Chapter 1018, Traceable to the Same Stock. Chapter 1018, Traceable to the Same Stock. The more he knew about the God Clan, the heavier the pressure that Shiyang felt. The God Clan was like a mountain that he would never be able to climb to the peak. This kind of pressure had suffocated him. There were incipient God Realm experts in every one of the 12 families of the God Clan. The Ascot family had the power to invade Agate Star area and they seemed to be making progress. The famous Dark Shadow Clan in Agate Star area was just a vassal force that was the Hounds of God Clan. This made Shiyang grimace. Aside from Benny, Zhuo, Leona, Fei Lan, and Ka Tuor paled as if they had the same mountain pressing their chests while listening to Shiyang. Until now, they had always considered the God Clan as the archenemy of the Bloodthirstis line. And the God Clan wouldn't give up chasing after Bloodthirstis descendants. No matter how hard they tried to hide away, they would never have a quiet day as long as the God Clan existed. However, facing the God Clan, they felt so small. They were like mayflies trying to shake a big tree. Did you get any information about them? Fei Lan contemplated for a while before asking with worries. A 1,000-mile journey begins first with a single step. It will take a long time to fight against the God Clan. At this moment, our powers are far behind theirs. Thus, we must consider increasing our power as the top priority. Fei Lan was talking about the 2 members of her Dark Sky family. Leona also had this expectation. No, Shiyang sighed, that man didn't have information about them. Perhaps he didn't participate in that work. We must carry it step by step. Dealing with the God Clan? Benny, the dark teenager, asked with an odd countenance. You know how intimidating they are and you dare to resist. You guys don't value your lives. In this vast universe, fewer and fewer people dare to face the God Clan. Until now, there has only one force that had almost destroyed the God Clan. But even that was just almost. Eventually, it failed and its master was gone. Fei Lan's eyes glistened, looking at the youngster. Which was that force? From the memory Shi Yang had got, the 12 families of the God Clan had invaded half of this universe. They had so many life stars and henchmen. Their powers were unimaginably formidable. The Ascot family alone had dared to plot against Agate Star area. From only this, they knew how intimidating the God Clan was. But if there was a force that had almost destroyed the God Clan, Fei Lan thought that it was unimaginable. Everybody looked at Benny. Under their gazes, Benny snorted but he kept his mouth shut. Although he was worried, his eyes were arrogant. Shi Yang looked at him, chuckled, and said as if he was considering something, "The force you mentioned has some relationship with you, right?" Benny straightened his back like a sharp sword coming out of its sheath, showing its talent. He admitted naturally and confidently, "Yeah, it's true. In this vast universe, only our force used to have the strength to force the God Clan act together. We'd worn out the power of their entire clan." Listening to him, Shi Yang and Ka Tuor laughed evilly. Benny thought that they were laughing at him. He put on a grim face, shouting, "You don't believe me?" Shi Yang and Ka Tuor exchanged looks and laughed harder. "We do. Of course, we believe you." It was over Benny's expectation when Shi Yang nodded continually. "I believe in your words. In this vast universe, we have countless galaxies out there and we know there used to be a force like that, the force that had almost destroyed the God Clan's huge foundation. I also know you are one of the descendants of that force." Fei Lan and Leona were astounded. Benny was startled. He threw a contemptuous glance. Apparently, he didn't buy it. "You know nothing. Brat. Show respect. People here are all your precursors." Ka Tuor smiled and told him off, but he didn't get angry. Precursors? The contempt in Benny's eyes grew. He shook his head, speaking seriously. "You don't deserve that title." Fei Lan and Leona frowned, looking at him with dark eyes. They were provoked obviously. Waving his hand, Shi Yang signaled them to calm down. He descended from the air and raised his hand to make a cut. A space saber cut off the pointy peak of an ice mountain, creating a flat crystal ground of around several thousand square meters. Shi Yang was the first one to land on the beautiful crystal platform on the mountain. He quieted down and sat neatly. His aura began to surge. The wisps of negative moods floated around him strangely as he refined the energy that his acupuncture points had absorbed. Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor cheered up. They kept silent, landing and sitting cross-legged in front of him. They looked at him with a longing face, waiting for something in silence. Zhuo Shi and Xian Ming were surprised. They also came to the crystal platform and used divine crystals to restore their energy. Only Benny, the dark teenager, was still hovering above their heads. He hesitated for a while before saying, "I'm done with my mission as your bait. I don't have any business here anymore. Guys, I hope to not see you again." When Benny finished, he wanted to fly away immediately. Ka Tuor lifted his head, laughing and tapping on the clear ice next to him. He said, "Kid, come sit here." Benny put on a cold countenance. His eyes showed his wild, brutal will. A devastating energy burst out of his body. "Are you done now?" Ka Tuor was still laughing as if he wasn't afraid of that teenager's outrage. He patted the ice next to him and said casually, "Come here as you're told. Don't talk nonsense. Behave or else Daddy will kick your ass." Fei Lan and Leona looked at him, their faces skeptical. They could see that Ka Tuor wasn't angry at all. It made Fei Lan and Leona more curious when they studied Benny. Gradually, they had some different thoughts. "Come sit here." Fei Lan pondered for a while and then pointed at the place next to her, urging the youngster, "Hurry up." Benny had third sky of King God Realm cultivation base. He knew where he was. He thought that he could survive facing Ka Tuor at third sky of original God Realm. But if Fei Lan took action, he knew he wouldn't escape death. As he was able to survive until now, he wasn't an impulsive fool. Thus, the youngster reluctantly sat next to Ka even though he was so enraged. He clenched his jaws. He glared at Ka maliciously. He had made up his mind, when he had a chance, he would make Ka lose his face. Kid, what kind of look is that? You mother****. Daddy wants good things for you, so I asked you to come. You brat. You don't know what's good or bad. Ka laughed and couldn't help but scold. What's good is your mother. Benny was obviously on the weak side, but his voice wasn't weak at all. His face reddened when he quarreled with Ka. What the heck is wrong with you? Wait until I get stronger. I will chop you off like I mince veggies. Good. 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 Ka wasn't angry but smiling. I'm waiting for you to become stronger because I can show you something good to taste then. My senior won't have a reason to stop me at that time. Shut up. Fei Lan frowned as she couldn't hold it anymore. Ka quieted down immediately. He retracted his head, shutting himself up. Benny didn't know why he felt afraid of this old woman. He gritted his teeth and sat down, frowning. No one knew what he had in his mind at this moment. Time flew slowly. For hours later, Shiyang opened his eyes. His pupils looked dark and wonderful like an immense galaxy with the light of energy. His soul altar seemed to about to fly out. Wisps of pure energy floating like light emitted from his acupuncture points. They headed to his soul altar, flooding his entire body. Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka were happy. They removed the headband, showing their foreheads with the blood marks, which had the cloud shape with marvelous energy fluctuation. Benny, the dark youngster, was very bored. He just wanted to leave this place. All of a sudden, he was dumbstruck as if he had just got hit by lightning. He sat completely perplexed. Swoosh, swoosh. The tangled hair covering his forehead suddenly burned like fire. His glabella became so hot that he couldn't help it. A similar blood mark appeared on his forehead little by little. You guys, Benny stammered, pointing at Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka. He fumbled with his hands, his body shaking. You guys have it, too. Don't talk nonsense. Just take the energy. Ka glared at him maliciously and hissed, focus your soul on the imprint and release your soul altar. When the energy pours into your body, guide it through your body and congregate it in the center of the sea of consciousness. Fei Lan and Leona also looked at Benny, at his blood mark to be exact. The doubts in their minds were gone. The two of them glanced at Shiyang, who was releasing energy. They understood it, smiled, and nodded at Benny. Benny had survived many dangers in the immense sea of stars. He had experienced grudges and pains from many people. Leona's and Fei Lan's smile had unlocked some place in his heart. He felt very comfortable as if he was seeing his beloved family. He couldn't help but have watery eyes. Hey, brat. Why are you still baffled? Scolded Ka. Benny felt as if he had a bucket of icy water poured on his head. He shook, but he didn't squabble with Ka anymore. He scratched his head, smiling embarrassedly. He followed Ka, opened his soul, and sent his soul consciousness to the blood mark as Ka had instructed him to. In the next moment, a flow of extremely pure energy poured directly into his blood mark in his glabella. After that energy got through the blood mark, it expanded and entered his bones, flesh, and blood, flooding his essence chi ancient tree. That energy overflowed his sea of consciousness, giving some tonic to his soul altar. He felt like his soul altar was a dried well that now had cool and refreshing water. This feeling was so amazing. Benny's thin body shivered. His eyes closed, but his face was twitching as he was thrilled. The energy continued to pour into his blood mark fiercely. Benny's happy countenance became clearer. If he weren't in a particular situation, he would have laughed out loud to vent his big thrill in his soul. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. His soul altar suddenly spun fast. The edge of his soul altar shot out light dots of destructive energy, immersing his mind into a marvelous intent domain. Benny felt as if he was severely hit, his mind shaken. He was baffled. After several seconds, his lips twitched. He stooped his head and mumbled, I've broken through easily just like that. Oh my God. Chapter 1019, Destruction Power Upanishad. Chapter 1019, Destruction Power Upanishad. Sitting cross-legged on the ice platform of the glacier, Shi Yang, Fei Lan, and the other were meditating. The red halo of the blood marks in the glabella of Fei Lan, Leona, Ka and Benny slowly dimmed. They were stabilizing the strange energy in their bodies to improve their powers. After an unknown time, Fei Lan was the first one to wake up. She checked Benny, her face surprised. The destructive energy fluctuated clearly on Benny's god body. It looked like he was in a critical moment of his breakthrough. Light of evil energy rippled, covering him thickly. Benny had his bones produced cracking sounds as his bones and joints were quenched. After a while, Leona woke up, frowning at Benny. Zhuo Shi and Xian Ming stooped, saying nothing. They knew that Shi Yang's team had many secrets, which they could hardly imagine. Shi Yang woke up after that, chuckled and then said, "Seems like we got more progress. Ka has his energy increase extremely fast this time. I think he will break through soon," said Leona. Fei Lan nodded. Benny and Ka were still immersed in their incredible intent domains. One had a chaotic, twisted energy twirl around the body while the other had a rippling destructive energy. 5 days had passed in just a blink. Ka stood up quietly, his eyes glistering like lightning. He grinned, "I'm about to break through." He looked at Shi Yang, "Senior, how about you?" "I need the realm comprehension. I still need more time to improve it." Shi Yang smiled, "But I think it won't take too long." Everybody looked at Benny. Energy fluctuating from Benny's body ceased. His face was calm as his eyebrows twitched. He opened his eyes under people's attention. Benny was so excited. "I've broken through." They all looked at each other and smiled. "I couldn't believe that you guys were the same as me." Benny was so thrilled. "I thought I was alone in this world. Seems like I won't be lonely anymore." "Tell us about yourself," said Fei Lan. Benny's eyes darkened. He sighed and said, "Our family received the inheritance of Destruction Power Upanishad. My ancestor used to be a member of the Bloodthirstis Cortege of 8. We controlled Dark Exterminating Star Area. 7,000 years ago, my ancestor left the Dark Exterminating Star Area and disappeared. Afterward, our Dark Exterminating Star Area was invaded. The God clan bathed my family in blood. Except for me, everyone was killed. I tried to survive in Dark Exterminating Star Area, but the God clan found me. I had to run and hide everywhere. I found a damaged space channel, so I took risks and entered it. Afterward, I appeared in Shadow Ghostly Prison. The Dark Shadow clan spotted me and tried to hunt me down. The invincible family controlling the entire Dark Exterminating Star Area was massacred by God clan. Naturally, it wasn't a happy memory." Benny sighed, his face dark and ferocious. "I will take revenge sooner or later." "Your meteorite has Destruction Power Upanishad. Is it an original incipient grade weapon?" asked Shi Yang. Benny was bewildered for a while and then took out the rock, which had a blood mark in the center. It was a fist-sized rock in his hand, and of course, it couldn't compare to the intimidating power that it had performed previously. "It's from my ancestor. I think it's an original incipient grade weapon. One day after my ancestor had disappeared, it fell directly into my hand from the sky as I was cultivating in the prohibited area of my family. It gave me the Destruction Power Upanishad from my ancestor. From that day, I knew something bad might happen to my ancestor." Pausing for a while, Benny continued, "As far as I've known, the 8 members of Bloodthirstis Cortege all had divine weapons that match with the powers Upanishad. You guys don't have it." Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka felt embarrassed, shaking their heads. "I know they exist. If you haven't seen them, perhaps they are hidden somewhere," said Benny earnestly. Fei Lan and the other two couldn't help but look at Shi Yang. "I don't know, either." Shi Yang opened his arms, his face begrudging. He suddenly recalled something, so he contacted the Blood Vein Ring to ask about this. Unfortunately, after the Blood Vein Ring had helped Blood Devil with the Death Power Upanishad, it had used a lot of energy. As it went dormant, it didn't answer Shi Yang. According to the ring spirit, its memory hasn't completely been restored yet. It couldn't remember everything. Perhaps one day, when its memory was all gathered, it could give them more support and direction. The Blood Vein Ring was a relic of the master of the Bloodthirstis Cortage of Eight. It was the critical key that locked the big secret of the Great Eight inheritances of the Bloodthirstis Cortage of Eight. As he said he didn't know, Fei Lan's group was disappointed. The original incipient grade weapons could promote users who had the same class of power tremendously. Today, the three of them all had the competence to challenge higher realm experts. Once they found divine weapons that supported them well, their fighting abilities would enter a whole new level, reaching an unimaginable realm. With the giant blood shield, Shi Yang had used his cultivation base at Third Sky of Original God Realm to parry a strike of Du Lin, a Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm expert. From that event, they knew the value of divine weapons. Seeing how strong Benny was with his destructive divine weapon despite his low realm, they started to yearn for their own weapons. "What do you know about the Bloodthirstis bloodline?" asked Fei Lan. "The Bloodthirstis line I've mentioned was the only force that could cope with God Clan in this vast universe. My ancestor was one of the members of the Bloodthirstis Cortage of Eight. He had Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm cultivation base. I only know about his legends that were told through generations in my family. When my ancestor was still in Dark Exterminating Star area, the God Clan had never dared to come. Quite the contrary, we often trespassed into their territory. I heard at the peak of the Bloodthirstis line, we had struck ancient God Star area where the God Clan stayed. We had forced the 12 great families of the God Clan to join hands to cope with us. However, they still had to bear the significant loss." Benny said with expectation, "Our precursors used to be extremely intimidating. However, for my generation, we can't do anything. The God Clan is chasing us around." "You know any details?" asked Shi Yang. Benny shook his head. "My grandfather told me my ancestors' legends. I don't know the details." Hesitating for a while, he said, "You guys all have the inheritances, but you know nothing about that battle." The others gave a forced smile, shaking their heads reluctantly. Benny was amazed. He thought for a while and suddenly realized something. He looked at Shi Yang and said, You aren't like us. You've sent energy to us through our inheritances, right?" Shi Yang nodded. You are the heir of the master of the Bloodthirstis Cortage of Eight, aren't you?" shouted Benny. Shi Yang nodded again. Benny was bewildered. He suddenly became restless as he unnaturally and embarrassedly wanted to give him a respectful greeting etiquette. Waving his hand, Shi Yang stopped him and smiled. "No need to consider those trivial matters. You can call me a senior like Ka Tuor, okay?" Benny was astounded. He nodded, his face strange. "There is a proverb in my family. It reads that as long as the inheritance of the master of the Bloodthirstis Cortage of Eight remains, they can thrive. There will be a chance for us to defeat the God Clan and fulfill our great merit." "Oh!" Shi Yang was surprised, talking with a smile. "Is that so?" Benny nodded and said, "Our precursor used to say that as long as the inheritance of the master remains, the Bloodthirstis line will be raised again." Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor were shocked. "For the time being, we don't need to discuss these things further. Our top priority now is to expose the God Clan's conspiracy. The Dark Shadow Clan is about to clear the passage leading to Agate Star area. Zhou Lu, the Great Elder of Potion and Tool Pavilion, is their ally. He will help the God Clan stir up the entire Agate Star area and put it into wars." Shi Yang said, his face stern. "If we want to cope against the Ascot family of the God Clan, we can't do it alone. We must gather forces around Agate Star area." Everybody nodded and their moods were down. Shi Yang pondered for a while and then sent a drop of demon blood away. It then turned into a blood-red light, flying away. P2E. He felt the tint of sweet blood in his mouth as he spat out blood, which then turned into red mist. His face paled. He used the demon blood to locate Fu Wei. However, since Fu Wei's realm was higher than his, he got a backlash. He hurt himself. However, his eyes brightened as he said, Fu Wei isn't far away from us. She has reached Shadow Ghostly Prison. Potion and Tool Pavilion has ears and eyes everywhere in Agate Star area. As they are on the opposite site of Zhuelu, we can use their powers to send the news of the God Clan's invasion to the big clans of Agate Star area. Senior, Jar Duo of Potion and Tool Pavilion doesn't like us. Do you still want to meet them? Ka Tuor didn't like this idea. It's different now. As elder of the Potion and Tool Pavilion, Jar Duo knows how critical the God Clan's invasion can be. His face darkened. Shi Yang took a deep breath. We just need to give them the information and then we will leave. We don't need to stay with them. Fei Lan and Leona nodded silently. Everybody adjusted their conditions and then got out of this icy world under the surface of the mineral star. They immediately departed in the direction that Shi Yang had shown. A vastly desolate life star inside Shadow Ghostly Prison. Many battleships were anchored in the forest. They looked like ferocious beasts crouching on the ground. They were surrounding a large, murmuring lake. Sometimes, battleships moved in and out of that lake. This was one of the bases of Potion and Tool Pavilion in Shadow Ghostly Prison. The lake led to the space underground, which was open magically like a holy land. Standing on a high jade tower in the middle of the lake was the senior management group of Potion and Tool Pavilion. They seemed to be waiting for something. Fu Wei and Jar Duo were standing there with the others. Xia Xin Yang is an outstanding expert of the Fighting League in Shadow Ghostly Prison. She leads a force of the Fighting League. Her power Upanishad is exquisite, indeed. The hegemon of Fighting League appreciates her a lot. In Shadow Ghostly Prison, Fighting League is the only force that can scope with Dark Shadow Clan. As the Great Elder Zhuelu is cooperating with the Dark Shadow Clan, we will support the Fighting League. We will attack the Great Elder, Jar Duo said in a low tone, his face brutal. Fu Wei furrowed her bold brows. 100 years ago, Xia Xin Yang appeared in Shadow Ghostly Prison. The hegemon of Fighting League has favored her ever since. She has opened her world in the Fighting League within a short period. She's now the spokeswoman of Fighting League. But she's not from our Agate Star area, is she? We don't need to focus on this, Jar Duo waved his hand, we just need to know that the Fighting League is the native force of our Agate Star area. She'll be arriving soon. Pay attention, do not discuss her foreign identity. We shouldn't displease her. Fu Wei nodded reluctantly. Chapter 1020, Women's Intuition. Chapter 1020, Women's Intuition. A massive asteroid was moving by the edge of Shadow Ghostly Prison. That asteroid was a little smaller than a life star. However, it was really big. This asteroid was dark brown as if it was made of metal. And it felt like the rigid metal indeed. This asteroid was like a broadsword with two sharp edges. It had many giant crystal artilleries that stood on the deck. All of them were loaded, emitting a dense energy. They were ready to shoot in any minute. Many metal buildings stood firm on the asteroid. They looked like spears jutting up into the sky with a sharp aura. A black jade high platform was built atop a pointy tower. A ghost-mark old man who looked evilly cunning was sitting on that black jade platform. He was the Great Elder Zhuelu of Potion and Tool Pavilion. Zhuelu was holding an octagonal mirror in his hands. He was frowning, his 5 fingers continually controlling something. His fingers were flipping through many images. This octagonal mirror seemed to store tens of thousands of images and information. It was indeed magical and profound. If someone knew about Potion and Tool Pavilion's secrets, he would recognize that it was one of the heart eyes of the satellite eye. The heart eye could connect the satellite to get information that was accumulated over tens of thousands of years in Agate Star area. Zhuelu was searching for something with a stern face. Standing next to Zhuelu was a young man. It was Du Lin. Du Lin bent his body, silently watched, and waited for Zhuelu's order. The images in the heart eye changed regularly. All of a sudden, it projected a blood cloud-shaped mark. Some special characters were floating, blinking next to that mark, and giving information related to that mark. Zhuelu became stern. He observed the heart eye while electric beams flashed in his eyes. Du Lin standing next to him couldn't help but look at the octagonal mirror. He focused, his face carrying some unknown intention. Is the mark on the divine weapon you saw his blood cloud-shaped mark? After a while, Zhuo Lu pushed the heart eye towards Du Lin to let him see the mark in it. Yes, that's it, reported Du Lin. Zhuo Lu nodded quietly, his face extremely grimaced as he said, this mark has appeared twice in Agate Star area. There were 2 men with this mark on their foreheads. They are. Zhuo Lu halted midway, his eyes frightened. Du Lin was surprised. He couldn't help but step forward, asking gingerly, who had this mark? Zhuo Lu didn't reply. He still stared at the symbols that described the blood mark in the heart eye. The longer he looked at it, the grimmer his face became. After a while, he put the heart eye away, taking a deep breath. One of them cultivated Death Power Upanishad. He had appeared in Agate Star area for a while and raised a bloody storm here. He had killed so many experts of Agate Star area. This man, he arrived in Agate Star area several thousand years ago. He made his bloody debut in Broken Star Field in Far West region. Then, he appeared in more areas. Each time, he used his brutal deeds to kill many warriors. Du Lin was frightened. He bit his lower lip, screaming in astonishment. What's his realm? Zhuo Lu lifted his head to look at the young man in the way that had reached his soul. The one you encountered isn't this man. Or else, you would have been killed already. His realm isn't clear. According to the documents stored in Satellite Eye of Potion and Tool Pavilion, warriors died in his hands were at first and second sky of ethereal god realm. Death appeared everywhere he visited. He didn't leave any survivor. If you have met him, you wouldn't have survived to talk to me. Du Lin's eyes were filled with deep fear. The other was the invincible legend of Agate Star area. He cultivated Despair Power Upanishad. He used to be domineering in Agate Star area. His existence could be deemed invincible. Tens of thousands of years ago, he was the powerful tycoon. However, he disappeared when he was at his peak. No one knew where he had gone. However, he was born and had grown up in Agate Star area. Legends said that when he was breaking through to the ethereal god realm, a blood mark appeared on his glabella. Since then, his power changed in quality. His realm became so profound. Zhuo Lu's eyes flashed like a ghost flame. He continued slowly, his voice low. No one knows why he got that blood mark while breaking through to ethereal god realm. However, he used to say that he got a mission in his perception. Still, no one knows what his mission was. Anyway, since he got that mark, his characteristics had changed dramatically. He became extreme and crazy. He was constantly challenging the experts of Agate Star area. Each time he succeeded, he put himself into an extreme situation to break through. He had challenged the warriors whose realms were one level higher than his. He brutally killed them all. Du Lin was shaken. He suddenly had a fear, his countenance becoming more restlessly anxious. The 2 of them had the same marks on their glabellas. Although they appeared in Agate Star area in different eras, they had created the same feast of blood. They were the 2 unstoppable madmen. However, the 2 of them had disappeared. It seemed like they didn't leave any inheritance. Zhuo Lu paused for a while and then frowned. The one you encountered isn't one of them. Otherwise, you would have been killed. Du Lin beamed a forced smile and nodded, I think it's not one of them. As he had only third sky of ethereal god realm, although he was arrogant and confident, he wasn't too haughty to not know how height the sky was. He knew that when he encountered the peak existence, he wouldn't be able to parry. He could be killed shortly after. It has been several thousand of years. Those 2 invincible characters had disappeared from Agate Star area a long time ago. You don't need to be scared. Zhuo Lu pondered for a while and then said, talking with common sense, the 2 of them didn't have any grudge against our potion and tool pavilion. Even if that shield is related to them, it has been a long time. I suppose it's not enough to threaten our potion and tool pavilion. Pausing for a while, Zhuo Lu cautiously advised, I've notified Hammer. He will go with you this time. Experts from the Dark Shadow clan will also support us. You go there and get the cannon. About Fu Wei, If you can't kill her, Hammer will help you. Du Lin felt so painful. Looking at Zhuo Lu, can I confine her? You can. But you have to make sure that she doesn't disturb our business and that she doesn't escape your confinement. Zhuo Lu snorted. Your grandfather and I are good brothers. You will become the hope of the Croc family. You can replace Hammer to be the head of the Ghost Mark clan. Don't fail me again. Otherwise, I will choose another talent to inherit the Croc. Du Lin stooped and nodded but didn't answer. Go. Zhuo Lu waved his hand, his face cold. They are in Life Star number 9 of Potion and Tool Pavilion in Shadow Ghostly Prison. Du Lin bent, backing off. Dash. In Life Star number 9 of Potion and Tool Pavilion in Shadow Ghostly Prison, Jia Duo and Fu Wei were waiting by the lake. Uncle Duo, how is it going with the giant blood shield I told you to investigate last time? As it was boring to wait for someone, Fu Wei suddenly recalled something and asked. Jia Duo frowned, sighed, and then shook his head. The Great Elder keeps the heart eye. Recently, our relationship with them has turned so badly that it can't be restored. It's not easy to use the satellite eye to search for information. And since it's related to the Great Elder, it's much harder. Listening to him, Fu Wei was disappointed. Fu Wei, it has been many years since you've been in Potion and Tool Pavilion. Which expert do you have the best relationship with? Think carefully. Is it someone you know that had helped you out there? Jia Duo was also suspicious. He understood well many divine weapons of the entire Agate Star area. Although it was a vast star area, you could count the number of divine weapons on your fingers. He knew all of them. However, he had no impression of the blood shield Fu Wei had described. He was also inexplicably skeptical. I think not, Fu Wei thought for a while and then said, I have a good relationship with many experts. However, it's just the business-like type. I don't have a deep relationship with anyone. It's related to the internal war of our Potion and Tool Pavilion. I think not many people dare to interfere. Anyway, our party is weaker than others. If there's some expert, I'm not sure if he wants to support us. Jia Duo sighed, his face dispirited. The Great Elder does have powers. If you didn't have the cannon, we wouldn't have had a chance to compete for Pavilion Master position. I don't know why I always think that Giant Blood Shield is related to Shiyang, Fu Wei suddenly muttered. Jia Duo was bewildered. His face darkened, scolding. Did he poison you? What talent does he have? Only the original God Realm cultivation base. How could he control such a divine weapon? Snorted, Jia Duo said unrestrainedly. At his realm, even if he could control the divine weapon, do you think he could parry Du Lin's strike? Who do you think Du Lin is? He's at third sky of ethereal god realm and he has the thunder god spear. Unless that one's someone at a higher level, why would he retreat first? You're being silly. Fu Wei didn't oppose him or say anything because even she felt that her thought was too absurd. However, she did have this intuition. It didn't come with any logic, but it was because Shiyang had given her a mysterious and unpredictable feeling. He was like a thick mist that concealed a lot of secrets. She didn't tell Jia Duo that Shiyang had used his life power Upanishad to refill her energy. She was afraid that Jia Duo would investigate her. However, Shiyang's marvelous performance and the safe feeling she had when he placed his hand on her back was imprinted in her soul. At that most dangerous moment, the shield appeared. It gave her a familiar, safe feeling and it made her relaxed. It wasn't different from when Shiyang gave her energy. A woman's intuition often has no logic and no evidence. However, with that safe feeling, she had linked it with Shiyang as if she knew the truth. You and he are just duckweed and water. You two have nothing in common. Your life will be arranged properly. You can't act rashly. Jia Duo continued coldly. That brat is just a traveler whose path has crossed your path of life for a while. He has nothing that is different from Du Lin and the other boys. Don't linger. That's how you can reach the glory position of Pavilion Master. Fu Wei's bold brown arched. Her eyes were filled with complex emotions. To me, he and Du Lin are totally different. They have nothing in common. Chapter 1021, The First Generation. Chapter 1021, The First Generation. Shadow Ghostly Prison had many forces, but only one force was powerful enough to cope with the Dark Shadow Clan, the Fighting League. The Fighting League was formed by many forces of different races. Initially, it wasn't concentrated. When the Dark Shadow Clan arrived and began to invade everywhere, the scattering forces of the Fighting League became more solid. They started to compete with Dark Shadow Clan to control Shadow Ghostly Prison. Most of the time, the Fighting League had the upper hand. Even in the most fierce and bloody battles, they were the ones who stood and smiled at the end. The reason why they couldn't eliminate the Dark Shadow Clan was because of that race's features. They could move like shadows, and the Fighting League hadn't been able to locate their headquarters yet. This race, which suddenly appeared in the Shadow Ghostly Prison, was really mysterious. They didn't know where they came from or where they were hiding. After losing a battle, the Dark Shadow Clan's troops could use the special damaged space of Shadow Ghostly Prison to retreat at ease with external wounds. The Fighting League had 6 big war departments led by 6 experts. Each department had powerful forces. Today, Windstorm War Department of Fighting League suddenly visited Lifestar No. 9 of Potion and Tool Pavilion. The gigantic battleships hovered in the air like dark clouds, giving people a heavy pressure. The massive battleship leading this fleet had a flying bird shape. It was almost 5,000 meters long with the wings as sharp as blades releasing cold light. By the late evening, a group of several hundred warriors of Potion and Tool Pavilion was watching at the battleships anchored in the air, waiting in silence. Shortly after, Blue Phoenix bird war chariots detached from the leading battleships. Those war chariots had the form of the legendary phoenix-typed bird with magnificent, sleek, 5-colored feather. While they were flying, people could hear the magical melody that was like birds singing. Those bluebird war chariots were also fabricated by Potion and Tool Pavilion. It was one of the top-quality war chariots that Potion and Tool Pavilion had ever made. It was famous in Agate Star area for its lightning speed. The bluebird war chariots descended beautifully. The leading war chariot had a light pink crystal lotus throne where a distinctively beautiful woman sat today. She was wearing a gorgeous long dress, whose hem was beautified with marvelous drawings and patterns. Her dress was flimsy and floaty like light flowing. Her black hair cascaded like a waterfall reaching her delicate waist. Her bare feet had 2 exquisite blue crystal anklets. The energy ripples from those anklets were wonderful and clear. She was sitting neatly on the rosy crystal lotus throne, looking like a flawless, blooming flower. Her bearings were elegant and indeed noble. Her pink, succulent lips had a cold smile. She descended from the sky like a goddess watching her creatures. Jar Duo was solemn. He hurried to welcome her. His cold and sinister face squeezed an ugly smile. He raised his voice, "Lady Xia Xinyang, you humble yourself by coming to our cottage. Thank you for beautifying our place. Welcome, welcome." Fu Wei lifted her head, looking at the lady slowly landing. Her bright eyes were wide open as she was attracted by the elegant and graceful bearing of Xia Xinyang. As they were all women, Fu Wei discreetly made a comparison and felt embarrassed. She began to admire that lady. "Thank you, 10th Elder and 12th Elder, for your personal welcome. I'm too honored to receive your warm hospitality." Xia Xinyang smiled, revealing her white teeth which were like the fulgent pearls and were very mesmerizing. The guards of Potion and Tool Pavilion lifted their heads to watch her elegantly come. They were so charmed by her beautiful posture, so they tried to hide their hot eyes. To the beauties, men always uncontrollable enthusiasm. As Xia Xinyang was a high-rank commander in Fighting League, of course, she drew a lot of attention, especially since she was with her outstanding men. "Lady Xia came here personally. We must treat you well. It's our manners." Jar Duo smiled. After the woman got off her bluebird war chariot, he jabbered. "We've prepared a feast. We're all waiting for you." When he treated Shi Yang, he was cold and imperious. However, when he faced Xia Xinyang, he was gentle and kind. He had even smiled. His attitude was completely different. The reason for this difference was Xia Xinyang's position in Fighting League. She was the one who controlled the Windstorm, one of the war departments of Fighting League. She was one of the most powerful characters in Fighting League. Moreover, the Fighting League's hegemon favored her a lot. The Fighting League, whether in Shadow Ghostly Prison or in Agate Star area, was an intimidating force, which wasn't less influential than Monster Clan or Demon Clan. Then, I have to bother you guys. Xia Xinyang's porcelain face beamed a weak smile. She nodded, following Jia Duo and Fu Wei to the lake. The water in the center of the lake parted, revealing an exquisite path made of jewels. It was illuminated, leading to the center of Lifestar number 9. The underground was a whole new world. The dome above their heads was inlaid with gemstones and jewels, making it look like the starry sea. Brilliant lights shone beautifully. Many several hundred-meter, white chalcedony pillars supported the dome and the massive subterranean palace. They were carved with beautiful and magical patterns. The main hall of the main palace was larger than 10 football stadiums with many strange and beautiful floras. Many small streams weaved with each other and meandered around the exquisite jade pavilions for the visitors to rest and watch the wonderful view. Inside those pavilions stood a table with sweet aroma from many precious fruits. This main hall was just a corner of this underground world. The other areas were arranged to fabricate battleships with piles of different materials. Hundreds of blacksmiths and alchemists were moving to and fro. They were so busy every day fabricating and refining tools, pellets, and armor for different forces around Agate Star area. Potion and Tool Pavilion had many life stars. This Lifestar number 9 was a massive factory that refined pellets and force treasures. It was under Jia Duo and Fu Wei's party. Inside the main hall, maids of different races were holding a tray filled with fruits, walking back and forth. Sitting on the main chair was a stout old woman. She smiled, squinted her eyes and waved at Xia Xinyang. "Come sit here." Jia Duo and Fu Wei became a little cautious when they saw that granny. They slightly bowed to greet her and spoke in unison, "Third Elder." Third Elder Bettina was a character at the founder level of Potion and Tool Pavilion. She wore a dark blue gown, her hair tied in an updo bun. She had a lot of delicate rings on her fingers and she had no less than 100 small accessories on her body. Each of them had some special functions. Seeing the granny, Xia Xinyang was a little scared. She hurried to greet the old woman. "Greetings, Third Elder. How is your hegemon?" Bettina smiled and asked. As she was at the noble founder level of Potion and Tool Pavilion, she didn't come out there to welcome her. As she had spent her time while being so busy to meet Xia Xinyang here, it was enough to give her face. At her level, unless the hegemon of the Fighting League came, she wouldn't humble herself to greet people. "Our hegemon is cultivating in seclusion. He's doing well. Thank you for your concern," said Xia Xinyang solemnly. "Come and sit, dear. Your hegemon and I used to take a walk around this world." "And you?" Bettina didn't finish, waving her hand. "Jia Duo and Fu Wei stay here. The others should leave." People of Potion and Tool Pavilion got up and left, including the maids. This spacious hall now had only Bettina, Fu Wei, Jia Duo, and Xia Xinyang. Jia Duo and Fu Wei were confused, taking their seats in the table lower than the others. They looked at Bettina curiously. Bettina was several thousand years old. In Potion and Tool Pavilion, she wasn't the one who had the highest realm, but she was the oldest one. Even the great elders Wu Lu was just her junior. In Potion and Tool Pavilion and Agate Star area, she was a legendary character. Ordinary people would never have a chance to meet her. Even an expert at incipient God realm could only possibly gain her favor. When Bettina heard of the canon, she came to Lifestar number 9. With her position and age, she didn't need to meet Xia Xinyang. However, she insisted on it, which confused Jia Duo and Fu Wei. They didn't know why Bettina valued Xia Xinyang that much. Sigh, it has been several thousand years. Time flies fast. After the irrelevant people had all left, Bettina sighed and asked, "Do you remember me?" Fu Wei and Jia Duo were baffled. They looked so shocked as they didn't know why she had that question. Has she known Xia Xinyang before? The two of them were bewildered as they thought that it was too absurd. Bettina had lived several thousand years. How could she know a little girl who has just arrived in Shadow Ghostly Prison less than 100 years? Was there anything more shocking than this? While Fu Wei and Jia Duo were perplexed, Xia Xinyang bit her lower lips, her face so strange. After a while, she nodded and pointed at her head. She was the first generation. She and you vowed to be sisters. I don't know what I should address you as. The granny smiled and said trickily, if you want to count that as sisterhood, should I call you little Mai Mai? Mai Mai. Bettina looked dazzled as if she had fallen into a deep place of her memory. She muttered, it has been so many years. You were so talented that year. You had the strangest time power Upanishad. Your soul has been reincarnated 7 times. You've lived in different star areas. You've used reincarnation to understand time power Upanishad. But it has been 7 lives. Are you still you of that year? Fu Wei and Jia Duo were baffled, sitting idly as they couldn't believe what they had just heard. They looked at Xia Xinyang with deep fear in their eyes. You want to hear the truth? Xia Xinyang frowned. Bettina contemplated for a while and then nodded gently. I know the truth hurts. But yeah, tell me. I'm Xia Xinyang. I'm not here. What she left me are the inheritance of time power Upanishad and her memory of 7 lives. Nothing else. In other words, she has gone and vanished in the long river of time. She made mistakes in her cultivation, said Xia Xinyang. Bettina forced a smile, sighing. I knew it would turn out that way. That year, your brother and I, no, her brother had advised her not to act rashly. But she was stubborn. And she had ended in such a way. Pausing for a while, Bettina continued, since he has intentionally assigned you to manage the windstorm and facilitated you to deal with the business of Fighting League, I know your secret. If you weren't his blood sister, with his characters, how could he treat a stranger so well like that? The man Bettina referred to was the current hegemon of the Fighting League, also the older brother of the woman who had Xia Xinyang as one of her reincarnations, Feng Han. Chapter 1022, Caning the Passionate Couple. Chapter 1022, Caning the Passionate Couple. This place. Standing on the asteroid, Shiyang pointed while talking deliberately. Fei Lan, Leona, and the others were surprised. Looking at a pitch-black area in front of them, they were baffled before releasing the soul consciousness to sense. However, they couldn't detect any life energy fluctuation. The cotton clouds over there were like ink, shading the entire area. In their eyes, it was an opaque area with no living being or any soul form creature. If Shiyang didn't have some special abilities, they would think that he was talking nonsense. However, none of them felt like that, as they were looking at Shiyang while waiting for his next explanation. The potion and tool pavilion is really powerful, Shiyang complimented. They can conceal the entire life star. You guys can't sense anything from that place. This unique force of the agate star area is really mysterious, indeed. There are many methods to cover the life star. It's not something really awesome. As far as I know, there are at least 30 methods to hide all the living signals of a life star. Benny frowned while talking arrogantly. We have many similar solutions in our dark exterminating star area. That year, we also used the thick grey mist of outer space to cover our main life star, such that soul consciousness couldn't detect it. So, this method isn't something really profound. While listening to him, people had their eyes brightened with surprise. So, do you know how to resolve it? Ka Tuor grinned evilly. My realm and power aren't enough to do that, Benny shook his head. If I can reach the second sky of ethereal god realm, I can directly break that obstacle to expose the life star. Benny cultivated the destruction power Upanishad. Although he was young, his heart for killing was too heavy. Towards any problem, his solution was always brutal and straightforward. He just needed to smash or break to clean it up. Fortunately, this kid's realm wasn't high. Or else, he would become the malignant tumor of this universe. His desire of extreme devastation resided deep in his bones. If he didn't like it, The first thing he would have in his head would be to break it to not feel so irritated. I'm sure there are guards inside the barrier. We just need to cause some commotion. They will get out to stop us. Shi Yang chuckled, touching his forehead. The starlight began to twirl around his body, then lined up and attacked the clouds in front of him. Boom! The cloud sent back dazzling sparks. It suddenly shrank like a rubber ball that was hit hard. It had a clear concave spot on it now. Someone will come out to check us, Shi Yang smiled, waiting. Indeed, after 3 breaths, a war chariot hissed along its way, piercing through the cloud and flying towards them. The 3 warriors of the potion and tool pavilion emerged with dark faces. They gawked, looking at Shi Yang's group. The team leader was shouting angrily, but then asked in surprise. You guys did that? He had met those people on Fu Wei's battleship. Seeing the troublemakers were someone he knew, he relaxed, giving a forced smile. What do you want? Please notify your leader. We want to meet Elder Fu Wei. I have some important issues to discuss with her. Shi Yang smiled while apologizing. Since you use a special method to conceal the life star, I have to use such a begrudging method. Please forgive me. However, those guards under Fu Wei's party had a good impression of Shi Yang's team. When Fu Wei had fallen into the perilous situation, Shi Yang's team didn't leave but chose to fight with them side by side. They had given Fu Wei's guards a good impression indeed. The patrol leader frowned, talking with difficulty. This life star number 9 doesn't belong to young elder. Today, we have some distinguished guests, so I can't allow you to get in. You help us to notify them. I'll see if Fu Wei wants to meet me or not. Pondering for a while, Shi Yang added with a solemn face. It's related to the internal competition of your potion and tool pavilion. It's really critical. Or else, I wouldn't actually want to meet your elder Jia Duo. The patrol leader was a little baffled. Is it really critical? Shi Yang nodded heavily. In a much more important way, it's related to the future of the entire Agate Star area. The man changed his visage instantly, talking hurriedly. All right, I'm going to tell them now. Please wait here. Then, they drove the war chariot and returned into the dark cotton clouds with a flash, then disappeared. Main hall, life star number 9. Bettina and Xia Xinyang were talking happily. Jia Duo and Fu Wei didn't intervene, just listening to them. Jia Duo and Fu Wei were astounded as they often studied Xia Xinyang with shock. No matter how hard they guessed, they couldn't imagine something incredible like that happened to Xia Xinyang. She had the time power Upanishad. Her soul had reincarnated 7 times, and she still had the memory of her previous lives. In her first life, she had vowed the sisterhood with Bettina, the founder-level elder of the Potion and Tool Pavilion. Such information was much beyond their understanding, shocking them too much. When I knew you would visit us, I departed from another area to see you here. Bettina was touched. It's been so many years, you know. I'm senile now and can barely walk. And you're still shining. From this aspect, I think, perhaps you are right. No, not me. It's her. Xia Xinyang corrected her, talking reluctantly. You and our hegemon are the same. You guys always consider me her instinctively. Unfortunately, I'm not here. I hope you could see this. I understand, Bettina smiled miserably. But, you guys have the same bearing. Although the minds are different, your powers Upanishads are the same. From some other aspects, I would instinctively think you're her. Jia Duo and Fu Wei sat quietly without interrupting. Suddenly, Fu Wei's sleeve sounded with a double clink. She furrowed, twitching her fingers. She connected her soul connection to listen to the report from the guards outside. Several seconds later, Fu Wei got up, giving an apologetic smile to Bettina, Jia Duo, and Xia Xinyang while talking. A friend comes to see me. I'm going to meet him. Bettina waved her hand as her focus was laying on Xia Xinyang, not mind the other much. Little Wei, you can go. I will chat with Xinyang for a while. You don't need to wait for us. Jia Duo darkened his face, his eyes cold while looking at Fu Wei as he lowered his voice. Is it that brat? He could see a happy gleam on Fu Wei's face. With his understanding of her characteristics, Fu Wei wouldn't be so friendly with other people with her calm nature. Only when she was with that brat would she show some feminine emotions. Thus, he could guess it correctly. Being asked, Fu Wei became unnatural. Jia Duo got more certain, talking heavily with a dark complexion. Not allowed. Jia Duo pitched his voice, which disturbed Bettina and Xia Xinyang. Bettina had a lot of wrinkles on her face like mountain ranges. She couldn't hold it but knitted her brows while talking unhappily. Little Duo, although Little Wei is younger than you, she's an elder of the Potion and Tool Pavilion. Her position isn't lower than yours. Why did you talk to her like that? And, you don't have the right to interfere with her personal business. Don't be wanton. Hearing Bettina, Jia Duo hastily got up, then bowed and said, "It's not that I want to control her. I want better things for Fu Wei. She has a friend in Demon Bloodstar. They have something ambiguous. I'm worried that she would let her relationship affect her cultivation. You also know that she's our hope. If she falls in love, it's hard to win the Pavilion Master Potion at this critical moment." Bettina was surprised. Her countenance became more severe as she pried, "Little Wei, is it true? Don't listen to Uncle Duo. We're just friends. He used to help me, and his relationship with the leaders of the Demon Bloodstar and Monster Dragonstar isn't shallow. I'm also working for the common benefits of Potion and Tool Pavilion." Fu Wei bit her lower lip while talking. However, she stooped, not daring to look at Bettina in her eyes. "You see her face? Does that mean there is nothing special in that friendship?" Jia Duo snorted. They drank the 7 emotions and 6 desires liquor. Well, if a man and a woman drinking this liquor together in a closed room, even if they don't have anything, they will have something. I think their relationship isn't shallow. Because of the canon, I had to use this bad plan. Do you think I liked it? Fu Wei was also infuriated. If you hadn't forced me to verify the information of the canon, why would I have to humiliate myself that way? You guys drank the passionate liquor together. Bettina was stern, looking at Fu Wei while hissing, "Little Wei, bring that kid here. I want to meet him." Fu Wei was bewildered, begging, "We don't need to do that, right? I'm just going to talk to him to see what he wants to tell me. You don't need to interrogate him personally, do you? You don't listen to me now?" Bettina frowned. "Is it true that you don't respect us elderly after your teacher passed away?" "No, I don't. Bring him in. I want to see him." "Understood." Fu Wei was reluctant, replying her in a muffled voice as she left. She was so begrudging. "Oh, you guys do cane the passionate couple?" Xia Xinyang smiled, but her eyes didn't as she said oddly, "Interfering in personal affair and messing up her real affection. It's not what you seniors should do, right?" Jia Duo parted his lips, but he didn't dare to oppose. Bettina was surprised, smiling. "You little girl, why do you think we want to harm her? We just want the best for her. Many people have yearned for the Pavilion Master position. If I weren't too old, I would try my best to get it. Little Wei has a big chance to get the position. This time, she had a huge lucky chance to get the canon. She now gets half the chance to sit on that Pavilion Master chair. If she messes up because of her love life, she will regret it for the rest of her life. We won't harm her. We are considering the best for her." Xia Xinyang denied voicing her opinion again. She smiled but didn't talk. It was the Potion and Tool Pavilion's matter after all. Even if she didn't like it, she wouldn't interfere. It was the rule, and she knew it well. After that, they didn't talk more about this. While waiting for Shiyang, they chatted a little more. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.